Plus Ultra presents The Grey Lodge, Room Culture, a roundtable on speculative ecologies. The Hyperborean Experiment, Arc 10, hosted by me, Jin the Ninja, who has a show called Threshold Saints, who everyone on this panel belongs to, but it's not just me, it's all of us in synthesis. So we are the Grey Lodge, who is a roundtable, maybe even a group chat, but also I think we're starting to be more expansive even than that. So we are a group of magicians, metaphysicians who discuss speculative metaphysics in all its, I guess, capacities. So I'm gonna keep it really quick for my point or my intro, I guess, but I will say I am joined by my co-hosts who obviously make this happen and in a very organic group who came up totally on their own. So this is exactly what I dreamt and hoped that not even the spaces, but just this kind of group, this kind of like discussion, this is exactly what I hoped it would always be. So you made or I don't know if I made a dream come true or we all in synthesis, maybe that's a more interesting kind of way to think of it for our purposes anyway. So you all made a dream in synthesis with me, co-synthesis, come true. So thank you. And I'll let them all introduce themselves and plug any projects that they want to plug. Obviously, I do want a special shout out. Not that I, of course, don't love Joshua, Solar, and Joseph all equally, and I do. But Matt will be on Rejects next week, and his episode will drop on Saints as well. Before that happens, because I'm going to be fucking first. Like, Nick and I are cool. Like, I love Nick. I'm going on a live at 10 p.m. EST. You all know that now. But Matt's mine. Like Nick can ask me. Nick can ask him, and Matt obviously can say yes. But I have to be first. Y'all know. Okay. So Solar, please introduce yourself. Matt, Joshua, Joseph. Thank you guys so much. And I'll say a little funny thing about you all afterwards. I'll just be quick tonight.
Hey guys, Solar Exile. Don't have a lot to plug at the moment. I have an episode on Threshold Saints with Jim that I'm sure you've all listened to if you were going to ever listen to it. I think we've got something else that got like priority queue in the can. It's less about me, but I am involved in that. Don't want to give away too much though, but that should be coming very soon. I'm profoundly excited for Matt's content that's going to be dropping on your channel, on Jin's channel, as well as on the Reject. So that stuff is very cool. Happy to be here. I'm puffing on an Illusione 88. If that means anything to the cigar guys. I'm maybe once or twice a year I indulge in that. I do have a sort of a roundtable question, which I'm only getting in now because I will forget. I would love to hear, if not necessarily on this live, like at some point in the group chat. For those of you guys who are either scholars or practitioners of any kind of ceremonial magic, I would love to hear like what your favorite rituals are with respect to sort of like ritual design, like both like sort of a purely theoretical end, but also like in terms of sort of ritual implementation. I know that's a random question. It's totally off topic from our stated topic tonight, but I'm curious. I'm going to be pitching a ritual that I have kind of sketched out in my head tomorrow evening for a print project. And I don't have to have it all done, but I'm going to be thinking about ritual design more intensely over the next couple of months. And I just wanted to put that out there for the boys. So happy to be here, guys. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Solar. Yes, I was privy to this little mini project, but I think with Solar's permission, maybe we will do a space or a series or a mini series or do something in that vein because I think that's an amazing topic. Obviously, Solar also came up with this topic in by proxy, like how they always emerge, really. Um, I don't mean Solar. I mean like everyone in the group chat. Like I listen to it. I mean I read it. I think about it. I'm like, what can we talk about? Obviously, we've been doing kind of a series on speculative anthropologies, archaeologies, and then we were talking about culture. So, what is sort of more important? What is more topical to our times right now, to 2025, than cultural ecology and like the sort of milieu in which culture emerges? So thanks, Solar. Okay, so you've given us two lodge spaces now at least. But well, yeah, we'll definitely ritual design. I'm very interested in it. Ritual grammar, very much something I'll think about, and hopefully everyone else will also think about. Okay, Matt, please introduce yourself, plug whatever you want, and then we'll keep going.
Amazing. Very nice to be with you guys here. Jin made me blush a little bit earlier, but that's okay. Matt Mora, Kabbalah, Tarot Astrology, everything. Yeah, it's all the same, really, just different perspectives. And yeah, like Jin already said, there's going to be an episode on his show, Threshold Saints, in a bit. And there's going to be a really fun episode next week on Occult Rejects. Let's see about that. And if you like what I have to say, make sure to follow. I have my website as well, a lot of cool stuff there. I am probably going to post some videos next week as well. So if you like those, again, make sure to follow me, not only here, but on YouTube. And yeah, today's going to be fun.
Amazing, sick. Okay, yes, Matt, we love that. Also, I want to say Matt actually has 2 episodes in the can, so he's not just a one-time saint. He's actually a 2-time saint, kind of like Solar and and Joshua actually. So there you go. Yeah, my slowness, but I have it all ready to go. And if you see an episode posted tonight while I'm on a live, you'll know exactly my feelings. I shouldn't say this on recording, but you'll know exactly my feelings towards the guest. If you see an episode go live after 10 p.m., so we'll just say that, which will be Ashley's episode. And then Thomas and Monty, obviously, our co-host brother, I let him and Thomas, or Millennial, duke it out a little bit on JJK, Jujutsu Kaisen. So it's a cool episode, I think, especially I think Mookie will appreciate it especially, but maybe some others as well. Joshua, please plug all your projects. And yes, you do have an episode of Saints, as I said. I'm sorry. It's really cool, and I have got a great name for it, and I'll actually be really in keeping with tonight's space.
Hey guys, it's a pleasure to be here, enter space and time with you all. Yeah, in fact, this has become my most regular place every Friday. So when I can, I try to be here. But I got something coming up with symbolic studies for Virgo. So I'll be doing a little blurb on there. I'll be sure to share it with you all. And then I think I got some things planned with King of Cups here soon. We're going to do a King branch political prophecy type episode. And then we'll be doing Messiah archetype here shortly as well. And so anyway, thank you all for being here with us.
Amazing. Thank you, Joshua. And of course, last but not fucking least, the Clue and Chair of the Grey Lodge, Joseph Reed, who has been a very good Silver Surfer, or Quicksilver Surfer, we should say, because he has gone along with all of my crazy things, ideas, and all of us as well. Obviously, I kind of pull it along, but we're all disparately crazy in our own way. But yeah, he's totally gone along with it, and he's been, what do the kids call it? Like a down homie ever since. And so, thank you so much, Joseph. And yeah, he is coming on Saints. I actually had an inquiry from someone if Joseph does podcasts, and I was like, yeah, he does do podcasts, but he is doing my podcast first because I am the, I like to be the first, and I like to be like the. I've taken a lot of people's podcasts, Cherry. I'm just gonna say a lot. So I maybe that's kind of my reputation. Maybe that's how I treat it. But yeah, Joseph will come on, and Joseph will also do that person's show, and if he wants, obviously. But Joseph, please introduce yourself and plug anything you want to plug.
Thank you, Jin. Thank you, everyone. Joseph at Fertile Bull here. Yes, media ecology and structures of consciousness are my current schizo obsessions these days. There will probably be something to plug coming soon, something service oriented. I'm going to revive some things that I used to do and flesh them out a little bit with some more of my experience that I've gained, but that'll be forthcoming. I've learned to not really ask too many questions because I don't really know what's going on in here. But I'm really enjoying it, and I'm very happy to be here. Listen to Jin's show, listen to Solar's episode, and Matt's and Josh's. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Joseph. Really appreciate that. And as Joshua said, yes, this is a plus ultra space. We believe magic is real. That is the foundation to these spaces. It happens in synthesis, meaning that all of us in consent together. So if you are listening for the first time, or for the as many of you actually, but many of you that I can see at least for the many times, you know that I consider, and not just me, but maybe all of us, and I don't want to speak for the co-host, but there is magic that can happen. There is a timeline magic, transcendent, um, temporal, spatial, chaotic, dharmic, mystery, current. That happens to borrow something that Joseph said, because I often call things currents, but then I'm like, that sounds a little edgelord, maybe I shouldn't, but I think it's cool, so we'll call it current. So there's something that happens, and we transcend space on an app called X. We obviously use spaces, so we transcend time, and we come together and all arise in the mind. So that's where it all kind of begins and ends. So I'm going to do a room shout outs, but I want to do one room shout out in particular. Actually, I have to do Mike, because Mike is a co-host, and if he wants to come up, he's more than welcome to come up. He's more than welcome to be a listener, whatever Mike wants. Great dude. Thank you, Mike, for coming last time. Really appreciated it. And as well as great to see you in the group chat. It really made it lively when you brought some questions, because we haven't talked about magic in a long time. So I think we all appreciated that. But I want to shout out Blue Hour Bookery, simply because I owe them a DM, but also they have been a great support to the lodge, and they have a very keynote page filled with beautiful herbs. You know, I love plants, and bookmaking and paper making, and just awesome things, like very keynote cottagecore. Like, you have to, this is the time, like Rom always talks about, like, it's like Rom was saying today, heaven is here right now, and it is what you build of it, what you make of it, and how you perceive of it. So thank you, Blue Hour Bookery, and your frequent support has not gone unnoticed, and is definitely very much appreciated. So let me just say that. Thank you so much. Avi, Bulbray Free, of course. Yogini of the Lodge, thank you so much for coming. I think every space you've come, I greatly appreciate it. Presence is always invited, welcomed, and acknowledged. Thank you. Ram Frater Singapura joins us from the early morning hours of the Jungle Asians. And no, I'm not doing a Singlish accent on recording. But it was funny, right? Like, it was kind of funny. I was pretty good, to be honest. I definitely drew inspo. I don't think I was perfect, but I think I did it, because I wouldn't have done it if I couldn't think I could pull it off a little. At least not on recording. Maybe in my own head, yes. But okay. So Rom, obviously our Aether Punk wizard, and so we appreciate you. I'm really glad to see you. I also want to shout out special Shakti Akiko from Japan, who was in the, or at least approximate to, the tsunami zone, but we hope is safe, and we actually hope that was fake news, Naga. At least in the sense that, like, nothing ever happens. Of course, things sometimes natural things do happen, and I'm not trying to make light of it, but as we've discussed many times, an angle, or maybe a way to engage with that angle of destruction, is through laughter. So, also a very tantric thing. Many deities have a ha, ho, and a ha as part of their mantra. So just think about that. Why would that be? Okay, retarded imbecile Dharma brother, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you. You have to. All right, you have to. You have to not doom pill. You have to. You have to. You have to be Dharma pilled. You have to be. Come on, like Diamond Thunder. You have to. All is good in the world. The world's a garden. It's like, it's what you make of it. You know. Draw the speech, draw the power, draw the word. And just like, yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, not to interrupt the shout out, but I do want to sort of shout out in gratitude, RI, just for the incessant Elul posting. It was, I think, primarily his impetus that got me to sort of read and then reread various stuff by Elul, and he was really the motivation that got the wheels turning with respect to a conversation that we sort of started having about the sort of technical nature of chaos magic, right, and the sort of reductive sort of drive of a lot of sort of contemporary magical practices, right, and sort of trying to understand that through a different angle. That, I mean, again, that's sort of downstream of the Elul conversations that's been happening elsewhere, man. So thank you for pollinating some of those ideas. I appreciate it.
Of course, and we just gained our other brother speaker, Monty, who we did shout out right at the beginning because obviously Monty is we'll call him the moderator of the Weeb chat, the king, yeah. Because if I get to be the dark Sephirotic prince of our Weeb chat or our chat, then Monty definitely gets to be that of his own or however style he wants to go by. But I'll let him introduce himself and plug himself and any projects that he wants to say before we obviously continue with room shoutouts. So Monty, please go ahead.
Wow, you guys make me blush every time I hop on these. Thank you so much. I don't really have a whole lot going on at the moment. It's just a lot of like personal life developments, but happy to be here as always. Weeb chat is becoming quite notorious, so I'm very proud of the chat that we've built. If anyone wants in, DM me. We can hash out my fee, but without further, I cede my time. Thanks everybody, and I'll chime in if I have anything.
And as I said, Monty has an episode coming out where he is co-chair, so that will be out in the next couple days, a minimum. I'm going to be really on it now. I've got some things going on, and it's good. It's all good. Okay. Thank you, Monty. And I said Monty also partly generated the spark of splendor, maybe, of the idea for this space because he was talking about in Weeb Chat. Well, I won't say the exact phrase just because, as I promised, we won't Fed post. That's a joke. That's a joke. But it was about the kind of the death of Hollywood culture, and so obviously cultural ecologies make sense. We're not all the same age, but we're in the same timeline. We're across timelines, silver surfing, of course, but we're all a mix. It's all global homo now. There's no distinction. It's all out there. So it's only fandoms, as I said, or as I theorized, maybe it's all fandoms. And so, what do we kind of make of that? So that's kind of where some of the idea for the space obviously came from. Yes, Monty, please go ahead.
Okay, so exactly what you're saying. We were talking about this before, and so I've dedicated like a lot of my like especially early 20s into film, and I care very deeply about the medium. It's et cetera, et cetera. But basically, my kind of my thesis on Hollywood as it stands right now is that as how do I say this? As Hollywood has gotten bigger and bigger, and as the landscape of entertainment has grown exponentially over the years, Hollywood studios have to go and put even more and more and more and more and more money into productions of whatever it be. It can't just be like $100,000 indie project that makes $1 billion, like Superbad or something like that. Now it has to be big blockbusters that ensure butts and seats, and you can thank Steven Spielberg for that. But basically, the way I see it is that Hollywood is financially anxious, where they have to go and have pre-existing IP to ensure butts and seats to therefore recoup their investment. So, in my opinion, what they're doing is that they're taking, the Smurfs, they're taking, Silver Surfing, the Fantastic Four, a basically dead franchise, and just injecting tons and tons and tons, an untold amount of money into producing these things. Now, the problem, which I think is good, I think it's fun. I think it's important for, these legacies to kind of continue on. But basically, it's rehashing these dead IPs to ensure butts and seats. And you also have to, $10 million budgets. In Marvel Studio senses, it's like $100 million in investment. But basically, uh, then they have, Los Angeles writers who then have to go and excuse me, they have to revisit the previous IPs. And in the case of like Indiana Jones, you have the short round character, which is incredibly problematic. So the writers themselves have a political obligation as leftists, or whatever ideology we want to call them, to not only go and correct the record and subvert the previous plots, but just kind of like, I mean, we all see how smarmy it is, like Lady Ghostbusters, how like cynical of a project that is. We all see how, like the Pedro Pascal stuff aside, who cares about him? But even still, like that's still a very strange case of like, why are we doing this? Who asked for this? And I just think it's really interesting how Hollywood is going, and I don't think it's for the better, but I also think it's not sustainable, and the foundation needs to buckle at some point. But yeah, I see Solar's got something. Go ahead.
No, man, I'm gonna do my bit where I ask the obvious and retarded question to try to like fill in more background, right? 'Cause if I'm talking to someone who's relatively like an expert, right? So the obvious question, right? Why haven't we seen a kind of renaissance, given the possibilities for like alternate methods of distribution in the same way that we've seen that basically emerge for other forms of art, right? Like I got a buddy who's running a noise and like power electronics label out in New York City, and shit's great, and he's not making that much money off of like tape distribution, or he does CDs, right? But all of his shows are packed, right? People want that, and he doesn't have to. I mean, yeah, he is his own label, right? But like, he doesn't have to interface with corporations, blah blah blah. The internet, word of mouth, social media gives him all the tools that he needs, right? So again, the naive question: why aren't we seeing that? Since now we all have iPhones, you don't just have to shoot, your movie on like Super 8 or DV Cam, right? But theoretically, you could promote and distribute it, right? And like book screenings and stuff like that. So like, why hasn't there been a kind of parallel, I don't know, boom, given what would appear to be, at least to someone who doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, similar increase in access for stuff like that in film?
Matt, please go ahead. And also before Matt, sorry, Matt, Bibliomancer, thank you so much. Appreciate you. I think this will be a fun space for you in particular. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you. Welcome you in. Mookie, of course, I'm so sorry, Mookie. And he posted Don Don yesterday. Obviously, I think that'll be Mookie and I's special Thursday thing is Don Don Thursdays. Because, that's my current favorite series. Very Aeon of the Daughter. Not beating any rumors. So, Crotokini, thank you so much. Friend to the birds, saint to the birds, and lodge member. So, thank you very much. And Matt Murrah, please go ahead.
So, while the question of Solar was being told, I was thinking about it. Because, in a way, there is a better way to distribute things by yourself nowadays, right? But that's the catch. If that's the case for everyone, then the rate of distribution, like how farther away your thing will go, is in competition with other things. Because if, say, before there were only like labels and like enterprises and whatever that could boost you up, and one guy got a different distribution channel, then yeah, that guy would have like an edge. But if everyone has it, then it's quote unquote harder also for everyone. But I think that creates a very interesting dynamic, which is you get to see less of those guys which have the different ways of distributing getting like super big. Like they're not going to be nowhere near the guys with like big labels behind them and so on. But inside their own niche, they are going to be reaching levels like unimaginable. So I have one example. Really recently, there's this technical death metal called Archspire, and they made like Kickstarter thing for their new album, and they literally like doubled or more what they had, and it was not like cheap money. It was like 100 something Canadian dollars, I think, and then they got up like to 300 or something like that. Like they doubled or more than doubled. And again, like freaking technical death metal band, and like why the hell would people pay for that, right? In theory, or support it and so on. And they only did it through Kickstarter because they got out of their label or their producer, whatever they had before. So it's like, okay, I doubt that a couple of years ago a band would be able to do something like that out of their own, or it would be much harder. Like these guys just fucking booted up a website, put up like some things that they want to give people, right? That are paying the goal, which is making the album, and voila, it happened. But these guys are not going to get nowhere near like another band, for example, maybe has a label or a producer or whatever behind them. It's like different games, I guess.
Yes, Monty, please go ahead.
So I love what both Solar and Matt kind of brought up there. So I completely agree, especially in the I'm sorry, if it's black or death metal, I don't really know the difference. So apologies for my ignorance, but I that quite literally should be the model going forward. When you look back into the 70s, and especially like the French Extremity, that's basically what was happening. There was these low budget movies being made. There was Michael Haneke. Was it Michael? No. It was Lars von Trier. He like basically started this movement, which there's a French word for it. I forget it, but it's basically just like nonsensical, just like the displays of acting on screen. It's basically for audience, plug your ears if you don't want to hear this word, but retard cinema. And basically, it's this thing of like financing art projects and letting the cream rise to the top is the way that all art should exist. Painters, filmmakers, podcasters. I think that's like equally part of this. If you can't survive lo-fi, then you shouldn't survive at all. And that there is like a certain level of that where the cream rises to the top. Bad products do not get to exist in our current mode, and it's really upsetting because as entertainment has gotten so much has gotten so democratized, and it's gotten so available is democratized, but there's so much competition in the space that everyone's fighting for eyeballs, and those eyeballs are so expensive and come at your personal expense that it's ridiculous that well, and that leads to Marvel Studios being financed by Lockheed Martin and the military industrial complex. None of this is new. We see it all the time, but the actual implications are what to me are personally terrifying.
All right, so I agree with what everybody said. I saw a laugh react. I want to hear kind of what Solar thinks about this kind of meeting of the movie industrial complex. And no, I'm not citing Yasha Levine, but I'm just it's an interesting, obviously, idea. And I agree that it exists. I think that it's impossible for national cinemas to not sort of interact with the mechanisms or the apparatus that as it is built. I think it's naive, at least, to believe that it can exist separately. And I think if you look at, okay, so we'll use Canada as example. So for music, this is a very well-known scam or a grift, what could you call it? Maybe that's more contemporary. Is that artists will apply for like Canada Arts grants, good big artists, like artists that everybody in this room would know, and so they can actually use the arts grant, but they only grant it to known quantities with like record deals, with publishing deals. It's the same bands, and I know exactly which ones they are. There's a lot in the both Toronto and Montreal music scenes that do this. So on their off season, they will fund themselves through these grants, and on their high times, they will also fund themselves through these grants. So it's kind of like a additional built-in layer, I guess you could say, or like a buffer, but then they become gatekeepers also of that sort of system, because there's only so many that get passed around. So you kind of create a closed ecosystem. And one of the ideas that I thought I would bring, at least, but it's something that you've all discussed, is what is the ecosystem going to look like in the future, speculatively. But in gardening, to use a metaphor that Joshua often uses, plants exist better in communities. Plants exist better in diverse communities. I know that's going to be like antithesis to the base right wing bros, but the truth is obviously this is a welcome or Happy experimental space. So I think polyculture, as in gardening, perhaps is also um, part of cultural creation ad hoc. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I actually do agree, but I heard something this week that kind of, I think, may even clarify that a little bit. Is that diversity, when it's kind of singular or sparse, is a benefit, I think. But then when those populations of whatever it is, plants, etc., they can become an invasive species, so to speak, and have a negative effect, like on the culture. And so we're talking like about ecologies. And so that's why, like, you got to be cautious when you transport firewood and things like that, because nature seems to have all these niches so finely tuned that if you, I mean, to us, it's not a big deal, right? But one little vector that changes can just totally upset an environment or an ecology. And so I think, us as humans, we're just so damn hard to kill that we don't understand that, like, finely balance in nature sometimes, I think, because we can pretty much exist everywhere on the planet, which is very unique. We're ubiquitous, whereas most animals are kind of localized to a habitat, even if they are widely distributed. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. But also, I forgot to mention earlier during the intro, but while Matt was talking about this Kickstarter death metal band, it got me thinking about the episode I just listened to, New World Orders with Simon on your Threshold Saints Spotify. So I just gave you a follow and click the bell. So, and I think I would encourage everybody to go over to Spotify as quickly as possible, because YouTube's starting this censorship campaign. You're going to have to like upload your ID and stuff to even use it. And so we were talking about rituals, or not to answer your question, but really this requires a change in our ritual. We have everyday habits of like watching YouTube or whatever. We have to break that, because that attention that they're craving, from your eyes and stuff, that's all ritualistically done. So, we have to break those habits and go subscribe to Threshold Saints on Spotify.
I mean, that's something we'll have to discuss tonight more broadly. But thank you, Joshua, for bringing it up, because it's it's impossible. That is part of the idea. Like, so if you could say you want to break it into thirds, so it was 1/3 solar. Obviously, Joseph, in his just presence, contributes to the idea of always thinking about cultural ecology. Then it was Monty, and then it was what's going on the timeline. And I guess my idea or my solution to that, as I said, I'll try not to Fed post. Kidding, joke, joke, joke. Uh, I, I am feeling. I've always felt like this, and I feel like it's so hard to contain politically what any of us are anymore, at least for myself. And I'm not saying I'm not a leftoid. I'm never going to be. Okay, never. But I'm also not. I mean, like, let's be honest. I'm never going to be like a totally base like right wing bro just because factors. But there's also a thing where I'm very skeptical of both power and capital in whatever ways that those things are manifest. And I think we also know after 2020 that it's much more synthetic than separate. So, but maybe not. Obviously, Sir Tim, just hey, Sir Tim, welcome. Cassandra, welcome, content creator, honorary lodge member. Go check out Cassandra, Fortune Cards Daily. Thank you so much. Sir Tim of the Tunnels, our brother from Hawaii. You were in our thoughts and prayers all week. Great to see you, and I hope that you are staying high and dry, both high and dry, in the great state of Hawaii, the true home of Hapaboria. Okay, I saw everybody's hand come up, so I think it was Matt's Solar Monty. I don't know. Okay, sounds good. Okay, all right, Matt Solar Monty, let's go.
Okay, so while Joshua was speaking, I had a lot of thoughts here. So the first one, since we were talking about gardening, and I got reminded of the tree, obviously. So this idea of, say you have an ecosystem, right? And that's the tree. The tree is the ecosystem, is the whole thing. And say you can only access one of the spheres, so one part of the ecosystem. It will work fine, right? You can work, it's like having just one tone in music. You just are playing one tone and so on. But at some point it gets boring. Like, okay, aren't there like other things to see and so on? It's like just this one thing. Okay. Now, the thing is, if you just keep playing random things, it's probably not going to be like the best song, or the tree maybe falls apart because you got like one sphere here and the other one without balance, or you have too much of that and too less of that, and so on, so on, so on. So through like this dance of the spheres, if you do it balanced in a balanced way, then the noise, which was, we were talking about diversity, right? So the diversity of the spheres, which could become noise if they're too much and too random and too chaotic and so on, they become like a song. So they become something more interesting with more depth than just, let's say, one sphere, because I have multiple ones working in cohesion. And it's interesting because there's a lot of like, sometimes it appears on my timeline, people talking about like poly, as in like relationship or not, and so on. And I guess it's similar in the same way, because you have this idea of either, you know, just one thing or just multiple things. And again, there's always like a middle ground, right? You can have like one tree that has multiple things in it, again, multiple qualities in it, and you understand those qualities and you play with those qualities, because again, a human is not just one thing, right? So again, a tree is not just one thing. So you can have multiple, even like personalities or ways of being and so on. And if you can play around with those well, then you can make like these beautiful songs and so on. And I guess it's in a way an idea to fight this thing that Joshua also brought up, like the apps and whatever getting like blocking people. So if you cultivate your own digital like gardens and ecologies, then you won't need this one big thing, like, oh, just one app that does everything and so on. You can have like multiple places that you can go to and use and so on. And I guess the internet becomes much more interesting in that sense than, you know, like just coming up and using the same 4 apps every day, like a literal AI. So it's a organic AI that we start to become. So the more niche and different and so on, I guess the more interesting as well. I guess Solar now. Don't know. You're mute.
I guess so. I wasn't sure if I was lagging out or if it was Jin or whatever. Can people hear me all right? Can I get a thumbs up? Because it's something about the host lagging.
Yeah,
okay,
we can.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm sure Jin will reconnect. We can. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, in terms of like a positive example for something that I see as like a way forward, and this kind of circles back to at least one of the things that maybe was generative for the space, right? So I've got a relative somewhere in California, who's been like deeply involved, and the family's, you know, kind of deeply involved in like the American Indian movement way back in the day, and the kind of cultural politics of like contemporary native identity and sort of like cultural propagation, which is its own kind of like interesting and sort of fraught landscape that's not worth getting into here. But the idea is that like there's really interesting like dynamics. So you'll have like 6 and 7 figure budgets that get proposed for like cultural festivals, art programs, things like that. And a lot of that stuff is really backwards looking, even though it's like synthetic. Like we've kind of talked about this, how like, you know, Ghost Dance and like Sundance are like, those are remixes of like cultural practices that like existed in some radically different form like 200 years ago, right? Like they're not actual like traditional, they're sort of neo-traditional, right? But there are these kind of funding ecosystems, right, that are established, but at present they're primarily based around like kind of niche like ethnic identities and racial identities, right, that preclude the expression of any kind of, again, I don't want to say like capital W white, but any like, you know, kind of majority, like what is, at least for the moment, like a majority sort of like, you know, cultural form, right? And so one of the reasons I'm optimistic long term about the kind of like death of the American monoculture is that there's going to be a sense, I think there's going to be, among other things, a sort of reemergence of local and regional cultural identities, things that will become legible once again. Like, for instance, the California identity, which is, I'm from California. My family's been in California a very long time. And so that's something where once this thing becomes sort of culturally marked again, there will be something that will be identified as worth sort of putting forward and sort of imagining or reimagining into the future. And patronage networks and funding networks can be established to do interesting things with that. And it doesn't always have to be so backward looking. Like instead of like doing something with, oh, we're going to do a dance troupe that can then go around and do all the Indian cultural festivals, right? Which is kind of one of the current modes, right? Which is cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But instead, it can be like, oh, we're gonna, you know, we have some 24-year-old, you know, aspiring director from the community who we know, who we believe in. We think this kid might have talent, right? We're gonna give him $50,000 to shoot a short horror film. Sorry about the dogs. And we're gonna screen that at like, you know, at an arts festival here, and then if it's successful, people like it, then that, you know, we'll do a revenue kind of sharing agreement. We'll fund that guy going on a little, you know, tour and stuff like that. Like I think there are sort of possibilities that will emerge that are currently not possible, just because all of those sort of like regional identities have been sort of subsumed into a sort of white bread thing that is, you know, sort of politically and culturally off limits at present. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, totally. I think it was like, that was the complete arc of like this whole space, was that we have to go back to region, like there has to be a regionalism embrace. Maybe that is kind of like the Wignot return to the land, quote unquote LARP. Oh, I think it's a LARPy, but okay, whatever. But no, I think that, but I think the true meaning, maybe you will break the klipa of that sort of like the idea of the Volksfrei, like eating zucchini in the summer. Like, okay, whatever, like do whatever you want, but let's be real. Uh, Going back to regional identity is a lot more interesting, and it's a lot more realistic in 2025, when we already live in a polyculture where we cannot really extricate ourselves in a fundamental way. And I'm not de-radicalizing the, you know, the Wingnut Bros. If you guys want to go build something in Missouri or wherever the fuck it is, that's totally fine. I'm not jealous. I don't need to belong. I'm not giving you my DNA. I'm not a Mormon. But it's cool. Like, you go do that. That's totally fine. Right? Like, no problem at all. But I'm interested in sort of liminalities, marginalities, and also like not progressive, but I'm interested in like a forward thinking way to belong in the world. So one thing that Solar, he didn't bring this up, but I think it speaks to that idea of geo-ontological relationality. Being in a kind of dialectical relationship with the land, the specific land, not the McCang land, but the actual land that you live in. And actually being realistic, not McCang, but realistic about your role in it. So I think definitely the gardening metaphor is ever perennial, we'll say, Joshua, in this space. And I'm going to let Monty go. But thank you guys for holding it down as I reconnected. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, so so much was said there, and I have a bunch of like stray observations. Now, apologies, everyone tonight. I'm mouthy but inarticulate. So hopefully I can get this. But just briefly touching on like regionalism. So I mean, how many times have we seen proposed ideas for the Balkanization of the United States? It is literally true that if you go and look at the Midwest versus the Northeast versus the Southwest versus the Pacific Northwest versus the South, there are a million different vectors that we can go in as a culture and a society, which is not based off of race, religion or ethnicity, but based off of, listen, I'm from New Jersey. I'm a fourth generation New Jerseyan, and that's how I identify. I am not German. I am not Italian. I am from New Jersey. But kind of going back to the topic of like ruin culture. So recently in the news, and this is something I care about a lot, is YouTube censorship. Starting on August 14th, they're going to start doing age verification, and they're going to be targeting. Well, you're going to be using AI to determine whether you are 18 or not based off of what you watch. I'm fucked. I'm going to have to go and upload my ID to go and watch my silly cartoons on YouTube. But basically, it's go and like compare that contra to the like 2014 cultural revolution that happened, where the race war was reignited, and now instead of having Gamergate, we are now having Israel and Gaza, like deportations based off of anti-Semitism, and the YouTube censorship is based off of protecting the kids. Congratulations, all of your censorship and your draconian measures of like getting rid of people is now based. Congratulations, Based Inc. Another great victory. Hail Vance. But so this is actually something. Another stray observation here is yeah, Sam Hyde, who is a very controversial figure. I understand, some people don't like his stuff. I like some of his stuff regardless. He always talked about, ever since his 2016 show got canceled for him being alt-right, was you have to build your own platform. If you build if you build your brand and your cultural identity off of someone else's platform, then you are enslaved to them. Much like how, we talked about this last week when it came to professional internet people, is they are slave to their audience and they're slave to their like monetization. If you stray outside those lines, then you get hit with the ban hammer, and there goes your, everything. And I bring this up because uh, it's you can't really question the narrative. I mean, we saw back in, I believe, like 2018, Jeff Bezos went and purchased the Washington Post. And we're kind of seeing like the walls like closing in on expression of free speech, self-expression, and general anxieties. Because I am from New Jersey, and it does bother me what's going on that my governor and other surrounding states are doing to the area, because I know my neighbors don't like it, and that's what should matter. I don't care about other places in the United States. I care about my people and protecting my communities, which are, have been brutalized. Really, just yeah. No, I actually am done. Sorry, that was too much.
No, if you want to keep going, Monty, please keep going. I think that both you and Solar brought up some interesting ideas. Like, obviously, I'll let Solar go, but I do think that the idea of ethnogenesis or ethnogenesis is really interesting. And like, what could that mean? Maybe we all just identify as American. Maybe the division is much more simple. Maybe it's just ideological. Like, people who want to be here, who want to do stuff here, who want to be focused here, they build that project. Maybe that's what the meta idea is. And there is something also about meta ecologies that I thought was interesting in context to what Joseph said, or not Joseph, excuse me, probably something Joseph said, but it was something Joshua said about transportation. Well, meta ecology is the study of how species and sort of nutrients and water and all of those things move through space. So, like, what generates the ecosystem? Like, all of those individual constituent, maybe you could say flux parts something we often discuss, because flux can come from ash, obviously. And I also said, like, let's burn the arc down. And also, it's something that Monty said that I wanted to say like way before, and then I'm really done. But I'm gonna just say it now, and if this is a counter signal to any podcasters, I'm really sorry, but I'm also not. I hate a lot of the shit that you show. A lot of that, like, neo American, like all those novels that you guys talk about. It's fucking lame. I'm not into it. I never was into it, and I never thought they were good. Okay, I just want to say that. Sorry, I have had that for like months on my chest, and I think Monty as well, at least in some ways that I have heard. Okay, Solar, and then Joseph. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly follow up too. Even the way that, like, and I was the one who I think said regional or regionalism, right? Even that, like, in the context of the United States, is so huge. Like, the thing that I have in mind, the slice of California that I'm from, without getting like too specific, because it is very narrow enough to like dox, but you know what, fuck it, whatever. My area has been completely devastated by essentially like a combination of like free trade, like globalization, right, and just like economies of scale in general, right? So like I'm from an agricultural family in an agricultural area, right? This is sort of on the outskirts of a very, very beautiful part of California between the ocean and the desert, right? And we grew avocados and citrus, and there was some light ranching, right, as you get out like really into the desert, right, in the sort of scrublands and the chaparral and stuff like that. And that's stuff that is no longer viable, right? Because like it can be done more cheaply without the sort of water issues and without either in South America or down in Florida and things like that. And those are things where once those structures are disrupted, right, once there isn't an incentive to just annihilate all of this inefficient industry and just build homes or whatever, but to actually kind of like return to a more sort of like locally sort of self-sustaining, self-propelled kind of like ecological relationship between, humans and their environment, it's going to, just open up really obvious possibilities. And just, I know, because we're not talking about like chicken in the space or whatever, but there are also sort of places in the environment. There was a tweet going around talking about Jack Parsons, right, who used to escape out to the desert and work his magic at the point where these giant power lines used to sort of cross. And that spoke to me so deeply because I am also from a place like that, right? I can, there are all these sort of caves and weird places that, sort of burnouts and mystics and kids wandering around on acid would like discover and rediscover and make up stories about and use for like impromptu rituals, right? There's mythologies that grew up around these like very, very specific and niche things. And you're like, how do I make that intelligible and interesting to someone like halfway across the continent or the world? And I guess maybe you can, maybe in some academic sense or some curious sense, but it's also like not for them, right? This is our thing. It's local to this very specific place where I am. And I want to be able to exist in an ecosystem where these things have an intrinsic meaning because we're all living there, we're participating, we know this land because it's like ours, right? And I'm not saying like I'm so attached to it, like, oh, this, it has to be here, but it's just the place that I have these sort of layers of meaning built up. It's in my blood. And through these experiences and it's a shared social reality, like it's fabric. Like it's not just like words, that's a real thing that when you try to export that onto the internet and try to like, again, make these things legible for people who have never even been to this biome, and trying to explain some of these things and to explain how the magic works and to explain the sort of specifics of a sort of mystical culture, right, around some of these like practices, like it just falls apart. It breaks. And I'm really looking forward to not having to do that, and again to not be sort of like competing in this like massive information economy of scale, you know what I mean, in addition to all the ways like that just kind of raw, like, like economic factors, right, that are going to completely change once I'm no longer having to compete my avocados versus, fucking Chilean, like, frozen avocados in the off season kind of bullshit.
I absolutely agree. I think that we do need. It's not that I'm still anti-pagan. I don't care, but it's not that it's return to paganism. It's return to. Fuck! I have to cite Gordon White. Geo-regional animisms. That's really what it is. It's about, and because that can be incorporated in obviously a Christian Kabbalistic frame, a Jewish Kabbalistic frame, a Dharmic frame. Obviously, I prefer like this idea of American Dharma as it's more all-encompassing and maybe more of a catch-all. I mean, like, think of it like Hindus get their big, they get their big umbrella, their big tent idea, which is really bullshit. At least American Dharma makes sense. You could actually identify particularities and practices within it if we had a more geo-regional culture like Solar's saying. So very interesting. I totally agree. And one interesting thing about that, and then I'll be quiet and then I'll let everyone else go. But white sage, the ubiquitous white sage that every Wiccan, every Botanica, that comes from that region the Solar's talking about, particularly that region. White sage is from California, Salvia apinea. So that, you know, that, oh, my Laurel Canyon is bad. Like, I'm not saying that it's not bad, but I'm also saying we are all, in a way, especially I think everyone in this space that I can see participates in a way in a very specific kind of new age geo-regional animism that is national and international, because I think it's nothing is more funny than you seeing like British Wiccans or British witches burning white sage. To me, not because I care about I don't care about cultural appropriation like at all or anything like that. I think that's, you know, obviously. But I just think it's funny because like you have your own shit. Like you could draw from your own shit. But you're attracted to the American shit because it's the best. It's the truth. Okay. Sorry. I know Joseph's been waiting forever. Please, Joseph, go ahead, then we'll do Matt and RI.
Thank you, Jin. I want to attempt to synerize things that have been said from the beginning. They're kind of like going back to Solar's original question about, you know, with all this access, why not more variety into what we've been talking about, these niche geo things. There's a forgotten or ignored kind of ground that a lot of things are just like they're specifically not paid attention to. You know, there's a whole thing about nepotism, of course, political agenda, and the way that you react, and I'm thinking like the general you, the way that we, I could say, react to things is also kind of pre-planned in a way, like how things are covered, how things are presented to public information. And so that, you know, this is monoculture. This is the monoculture that we're talking about. And it's a form of, obviously, it's a form of control. And so when we talk about this kind of like, oh, okay, just for shorthand, return to the land and this kind of stuff, like that's beautiful, but like they are coming for you. Survival subscription survival is what that machine has planned. And so it definitely seems that there's some kind of like bifurcations. Like there are some like people that'll be like, okay, plug me in, and this is, I'll buy this, you know, level 2 food subscription for, you know, the month and all this kind of stuff. And then there are other people that are going to be outside of that. And so there's a lot of like forgotten or ignored or hidden ground that will have to be like kind of just let go of. Like, and a lot of it might be access to things, you know, like this space that we have right now, like YouTube. And P.S. age verification, that is strategic messaging. It's they're looking for something else. It's not about your age. Hold on a sec. So what Solar said, okay, we let go of, there's a lot of things that we let go of. How much can we let go of? You know, how much of our convenience can we let go of? How much of our identity, which I just like, how much can I let go of? Like, do I have to identify as a human even? Like, and letting go of the kind of obsessive, compulsive wanting to explain everything, to kind of like transfer direct experience into words to share with other people on the internet, might be something that we have to let go of in order to really experience some kind of meaningful new way of being. I don't know. And I want to make one last thing I really suggest, because I love books. If you haven't read it, Crowds and Power. Crowds and Power by Elias Canetti. That's Canetti. Basically, it's all about, well, it's all in the title, but I thoroughly recommend. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think it was Matt and RI, or it's RI then Matt. Okay, well, Matt, do you mind if I let RI go? And then, okay, all right. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that, brother. Okay, all right, please go ahead.
Yes. Of scaling. So with all these, let's say, global problems, I'd like to reiterate that point that you made with doing things more locally. But even when doing things more locally, it's, I think, very important to look at how scaling always generates problems of its own. So whenever you have a solution to a problem, that solution to that problem will apply to a very small thing. And whenever you try to scale it, new problems come up. So in that sense, I think it's very, let's say, tempting to think in a way that, oh yeah, this huge problem can be solved globally by, all these different ideologies, or a new writer you come up with. So you discover a new author and you think, oh shit, this will solve it all. That global problems cannot be solved by global solutions. I think that's a really important point to reiterate. That it's really, you have to start very individually, and that's the only place you can start. And it's very tempting to try to look at global solutions, but the only thing that will really carry weight will be a very, very small step.
I mean, this is something that we talk about every week in this space, RI, is really about like the great work is yourself. Dharma starts with you. Dharma is your practice. For first and foremost, it's not a belief. It's not even a framework. It's a framework of how to do, method, of course, and bodhicitta, both in synthesis, maybe. But it is, that is the vehicle. So you have to do it. If you don't do it, are you a Buddhist? I mean, I'm not saying you. I'm saying for a lot of people on Dharma Twitter, because they all seem to have me blocked, is that the idea is it should be about your practice, your praxis. Dharma is about praxis, fundamentally. Whether that's Christian Dharma or that is Buddha Dharma. So, or Thurgy, or whatever, or magic, or the way we talk about it, or like these ideas of like remixing ritual grammars, like Solar's talking about, like something I'm very interested in, because this is a lot about what obviously Tantra is. The remixing of ritual grammars in order to purify it. And maybe that is what you're also talking about, like problems of scale have to be solved individually. So what, at least let's just bring it back to like the Hapborian sort of like America, but like in the cool way example. Like, okay, so America, you're all high IQ, like cool white dudes. Go solve it. Go solve the problems individually and then regionally. That's what I think. I think that's that makes the most sense. Is kind of like you project into the world in a small way, obviously through praxis, but then also through participatory methodologies, you could say, and go out in the world and do that. I think that seems to me, at least as a speculative conclusion, or a speculative, like, not a conclusion, because a conclusion seems fixed. And I think something that you brought up, RI, is that we always talk about how everything is in flux, and how culture's in flux, we're in flux, we're the Quicksilver Surfers. So you have to move through all of these things. Like maybe you have to change your opinion because of some other thing presents itself that causes, you could say, a paradox. Because every good magician loves to resolve paradox. Every good tantrika loves to resolve paradox. And paradox begins in the breath. So fundamentally, you resolve it inside yourself, but sometimes you have to change your view, change the ways you think about it so you can approach it from a different angle. Okay, yes, I'm sorry, Matt. Please go ahead.
Oh, that was very, very interesting. So bear with me here because I noted down some stuff. First idea, yeah, we, like Jin said, we, I think, repeated almost every spaces, this idea of starting with yourself first, right? Starting on the kingdom. And what is the kingdom but yourself first, then your closest mutuals, your home, neighborhood, city, country, yada, yada, yada. So it keeps growing, but you can only act within your kingdom. That's your magic circle, let's say. And the more focused you are on that, instead of like the quote unquote outside, the other things, the more influence you can have on things. And it's very interesting. I completely agree with RI, this idea that sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to fix a problem and it's going to be over. The thing is, every time you fix something, you create another possible problem. So let's say you, in business, for example, people try to automate things. So they say, oh, I'm going to automate the customer support messages. And, you know, there's going to be an AI talking to people now and so on, so on. Okay, that gets automated. But now, for example, the thing you use to automate it, be it an AI, it is a point of failure now. So maybe tomorrow the AI is out of service for whatever reason. And that's not something crazy to think about if you pay attention in the timeline. At least in my timeline, that tech stuff appears. There has been more and more like outages of bigger services. So something like Cloudflare, which a lot of companies use, or like Amazon or whatever. So if one of those gets out, then guess what? Everyone stops working because they're all relying on them. Okay, but if you change to, oh, I'm going to host my own server and do my own things, that's also a problem because, again, you got to take care of it. You got to be there and looking and so on. So it is really impossible to fix everything because when you are trying to fix, you're focused on the problem. So that's the trick as well. Sometimes what is a problem to you is not a problem to someone else. So does the problem even exist? Like Joseph was saying, like, are you attaching yourself to the idea of the problem, but does it even exist at some point? It's like the parable of the fisherman, right? The entrepreneur guy is there trying to get money and so on to buy the boat, and then he says the same for the fisherman, which is there lying, quote unquote, doing nothing. And then the fisherman asks, like, yeah, okay, but to do what? Yeah, to buy a boat. The fisherman's already in the boat. It's not a problem for him. Like, the other guy, the businessman, is like crazy, going for the money and so on to get the boat. So sometimes, yeah, you can cut short your path and just go straight to what you want to change, and you can change, again, in your own kingdom. And something very interesting Joseph brought up as well, which is the idea of, let's say, even sometimes we having to accept that, okay, if you want more comfort. So for example, it is very comfortable right now that I'm at home and I'm talking to you guys in very different places in the world, right? Some people in Europe, America, whatever, or even the other side, like in Asia, like Ram and so on. So this is very comfortable, but for that to be possible, we have some compromises, right? So eventually, again, we gotta use another person's platform, and we gotta put information here and so on and whatever. So you can, it's not like you cannot do it. In theory, if all of us were extremely super mega practitioners of like astral projection and whatever, we could have this conversation like without X. So that would be, Ghost. That would be super nice. But while that doesn't happen, we gotta use like a platform, and that's fine. But it comes with the cost. It comes with the basically having to give something, right? So we have to give either our time here or information or whatever. It depends on the platform. But in theory, all of those technologies that we use, that it seems to us nowadays that it's so important, like the telephone or like whatever it is, in theory, we all have those technologies already, again, inside our kingdom, inside ourselves. So the more we focus on fixing the things, and what I mean ourselves, I mean sometimes literally like in your body. So sometimes there is a problem in your surroundings, like your neighborhood or your closest sphere of action, which gets translated into your body. And then if you fix that in the body, the situation gets fixed, or vice versa. If you fix a situation, the thing gets fixed in your body if you had like a problem or something. And again, if you pay attention, you're going to see it's instant, and you're going to know why. For example, you wake up with a sore throat or something, you're going to know exactly why that happened. It's not random at all. There's always some line of thought there that you can follow and see what's going on. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but at least you can try to understand a little bit of the game.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. Obviously, amazing points. And I want to say, Joseph did say amazing, incredible, obviously. That's why he's a co-host, because Joseph brings it. But I want to do some quick room shout outs. Ashley, Think Change Repeat, Union of Unknowns, literally just uploaded your episode of Spotify like maybe a couple hours ago, so that's dropping really soon. So thank you so much for coming, appreciate it. And Knights of the Storm as well, please check out Ashley's work, veteran podcaster in her own right. And we have Moonblade, Brother Moonblade, our sick brother, also a large member, and appreciate you. Great to see you, and hope one day you'll want to come up on speaker. So amazing. Okay, Monty, please go ahead.
I everything that everyone's saying makes so much sense if you just like take one step back. Like everything is so clear. Think of yourself as someone you're responsible for. And if you can't do that, think of yourself like an RPG character. You should go and see like wasting time, detritus, bad habits, all of these things as things that why would you ever waste your time in the slot machines in a video game where you never win? So why would you do that with your real money just because you saw like someone else do that? Now and also just like this also extends into the regional ecology. Guys, you should go and look at your surrounding in your area as every tree that you hold dear to your heart is the Great Deku Tree. We all have a Gerudo Canyon. We all have the Zora Waterfall, and we all have the Goron Volcano. These are things that should unite us, and that like we have to rectify within ourselves and like reconnect with nature and be part of our areas and surroundings and take us away from like our phones, which you would never let your child spend as much screen time. I don't know. I just think it's but when you finally understand that like you are responsible to yourself, you are then finally free to go and like we're all so close to enlightenment every single day. It just decides whether or not you decide to like wake up or not is how like we get there. And the only way that you can get others to inspire others to wake up is by waking up yourself.
Yeah, 100%, Monty. Obviously, this is the Malkuth to Kether pipeline. We are middle path space, synthesis and rectification. Sometimes we like to go to that secret threshold known as death, but we're going all the way. We're going all the way to the hyperspace kingdom, right? So Pink Ray, for sure. Even though it's not technically, I won't say it, but it's not technically one of those spaces. But I think in general, like our sort of discursive mode is kind of like that, path. Obviously, I always label them path 22 plus ultra, right? Because it's exactly what Monty said. Like you have to generate at first that spark in yourself, that polarity, right? And then you have to kind of move with the flow. And, as Matt would say, you have to travel through the Sephira, and you can't be fixed and you can't be too klipothic. And I think we've talked about this extensively. Like corporations are very literal klipas. Like they're very literal klipas. Their corporate structures are klipothic. It's not, it just is what it is. It's not inherently evil, but they can be vessels for destructive purposes, right? So I think that is a lot of what we're seeing right now. And I'm not saying anyone's wrong. And I'm not saying that it's not going to happen or nothing ever happens. I agree with the assessment that it's not about age. I agree with that 100%. I think it's 100% about who we are, our identities, and like conjoining that to like a fixed person in the world in Malkuth, right? Like, what does the state think of themselves as, or what do corporations think of themselves as? Well, as we've talked about, Tippereth has a lot of civilizational qualities, and obviously corporations have a beast-like quality, you could say. But as we've said, Ketu also appears there, the apotheosis of like the demiurge, you could say, into the clear view of reality, the sort of the archon of the ego, right? He appears there to eclipse the sun with his smoky tail of delusion. So I think it's a lot about telling us, telegraphing, scaring. I think Monty brought this up. Like he's saying, and I think rightly so, that corporations act a lot out of anxiety. And I think that also goes along with what Joseph posted in the chat, is that the revenue models, they don't want to be Quicksilver surfers. Klipothic beings can't be Quicksilver surfers because they're Klipothic. They're fixed in place. So this is really important, right? Like to silo us into these kind of revenue models, very fixed, very corporate, but it's state and corporate together. It's both of the things in synthesis, right? I personally think that we're going to win. I don't think that it's whatever that means, but at least let's put it out there. At least let's say we're going to win. Like, this is not going to happen. This is like a thing, and we're going to speak against it. We're going to say no. And I think there'll be, of course, you see how astroturf it is in the comments of like discussions on this very topic. You will see blue check streamers, specifically Twitch streamers, say, oh, that's fine. Like, what do you have to hide? It's not about hiding anything, but the internet has always been a pseudo-anonymous space, always. And it's important to retain a degree if you choose. Like, if you want to face fag, as they all call it, that's up to you. That's totally fine. There's no problem. But to take away the quality of what is more like Joseph was talking about this, like our sort of inclination, our impulse to name things, to speak with each other, to be in synthesis, to be in dialogue, to give our fucking opinions, to post keynote, whatever you're doing on the timeline. Yeah, that is a very human impulse. That's our very Hode-like impulse. And so I don't think we can give that up. I'm not ready to give that up. I'm not ready to quiet the Ipsos. But I am ready to give up those conveniences simply because they don't particularly serve me. So, yes, that is a paradox, but okay, maybe we'll solve it now. Okay, Joseph and then Solar, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jin. What I left out before, and this just ties into what you're saying, is that the corporations, they have starvation anxiety, and that's kind of what everybody is suffering from, starvation anxiety, and it's very root chakra kind of stuff. But in the terms of why are we stuck in the ways that we are? Why are we keep playing these loops? Why are there constant reboots in entertainment? Why do we keep going through the same motions? Because at some point we have been told that we are not enough, and we believed it. Like, we are not enough, so you can't, even though, start with yourself, it doesn't matter because you're doing it for the eyes of others at some level for some kind of approval. Even saying, oh yeah, I want to like start with myself and then it'll go out and change the world. Yeah, but like if you start from, I want to change myself because it'll go out and change the world, even if you have that idea that it's going to change the world in some way, then it's already compromised in some way. It will change the world. It's naturally going to radiate and change the world. Like, this is such a difficult thing for me to embody all the time. but if we are in communication with each other, there's a very delicate balance here, because Jin, I totally agree. I don't want to give up talking to everybody. I love it. But if it's like, what's the intention behind it, right? If it's like, I'm radiating and you're radiating, we are in synthesis, we are in communication, we are in ecology, we are in syneresis. Like, that's a beautiful dance. If there's something like, I'm doing this because I need to be seen as, or I need the world to be a certain kind of way, then that's unbalanced, right? But it really, it's such a tightrope. That's basically what I wanted to say. Thank you.
You are most welcome, Joseph. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, it is. It's hard. And like, there is something you said that is very bodhicitta. I'm going to say it because Rom's in the room, but bodhicitta maxing, right? Like, it's like, what leads you? What goes you along? What brings you through the paths? And I think that that's also about reboot culture, remake culture, skinning the dragon multiple times. This like old idea, ketu, it's like the smoke. It's like the nothing is left. No prayoga, no energy, there's nothing. It's just reconstituting the same thing over and over and over and applying no other force to it and repackaging it. That's very Rahu like, right? Like the way like posters and meat and like H and not HR, all the the PR. Sorry guys, PR. So that's all very Rahu like, right? It's like telling you the story of what you should perceive of the thing that they're selling you. So they desperately need you to be in dialectical relationship to believe that their product exists when it's really just ephemeral at best. So yes, solar and then RI.
So this is going to be my final comment because I'm going to have to log out. But because I'm greedy, I actually want to hear what RI has to say. Just one more little nugget before I log. So go ahead, man.
All right. Yes, I made a connection in my mind, which you maybe have talked about again before, but I cannot join every space due to time zones. But I was wondering what you would think about this connection of anonymity and an almost shamanic way of posting because of it, because you have a certain mask on, that mask allowing you to bring stuff up from out of yourself that you normally would not have come up with. And that let's say anonymity is a virtue in that sense, that it can allow you to express more of yourself than if you were to be face fagging. And this is not even talking about let's say doxing. Like, it has nothing to do with doxing. It has to do with being able to express more of yourself because of the mask, and because of the mask allowing you to access more of yourself.
Yeah, that was great, man. Thank you so much. I agree. I mean, that's what that's what it's about. It's right, drawing from the aether wave. Yes, Solar. I'm sorry, I won't speak. Please go ahead.
Yeah, man. No, don't worry about it. I wanted to bump stack. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say. Oh God, of course the plane decides to traverse right as I speak. Yeah, so I sort of wanted to circle back to something that Joseph said a while ago, and just to kind of emphasize it because it stands out to me. Like, we're not going to lose overnight, at least. Like, our ability to sort of, network and communicate with people, even, across the planet. Like, the undersea cables, are not getting cut, right? What's going to happen is there's going to be a higher threshold, right? It's going to be perhaps, like, even in the worst case, possibilities, it's going to be that much more difficult, right? We're going to have to go out of our way. We're going to have to use maybe communication channels that are more restrictive, that we haven't had to use, right? Because we've become accustomed to the tremendous convenience and openness and accessibility of a space like this, right? And we're going to, whether it's going back to direct, perhaps encrypted messaging, right, or closed forums, things like that. I'm actually totally cool with that, right? Because I've found, and again, I don't think I'm unique. I'm certainly not unique in any way, right? So I can't be the only one who finds himself almost drowning because I have such tremendous access to such a deep pool of information, while at the same time living a very modern, contemporary, very efficient life. And I have so few hours that I get to spend with other people practicing, or just even by myself practicing, right? That my whole perspective, for instance, like in Dharma practice, like I have access to libraries of text that would make like all of the ancestors, all of the great masters of our traditions so jealous, right? Just incredible wealth of information. But I don't know what the fuck to do with any of that stuff, right? Like, because again, I only get to actually go to my Sangha like once a week, or I get to sit for half an hour a day, right? And so if we kind of move into an age where we have to be a little bit more intentional and deliberate about what we are able to actually put kind of out there and share the information that we actually, you know, get to communicate with one another, I think it's going to lead to ultimately kind of a rebalancing, right? There's going to be less of a premium put on what can I put into words to communicate, as kind of Joseph was saying earlier, right? Like what can I sort of communicate and brand and do this, you know, on this level and on this very open platform, for instance, like social media, right? And it's going to be more, okay, well, I can maybe send a dispatch a few times a week or whatever to a closed group. There's going to be less performance, and there's going to be, again, sort of just a greater emphasis on practice, because we won't be able to be spending all of our time in this kind of, you know, crazy open ecosystem of like, you know, web 3.0 social media or whatever it is, you know. And I think that's cool. And just kind of touching on something RI said very superficially, right? Right now, yeah, we can wear the shamanic mask, right, of of whatever sort of personas we want to put out into the world on social, but we can almost do so like so freely, like almost like too freely, right? Like I can wear like 90 masks at once, right? I can have like 3 different accounts, I can be doing all these things. And I do think that, again, like putting some kind of constraints and limitations on that will force us to actually do more interesting things like with those possibilities, right? I don't know. And again, this is all very basic shit, but you know, just like my background's poetry, right? And poetry translation and things like that. Constraints are almost always a good thing. Constraints are almost always productive. Now, again, that can go too far, obviously. Like we want balance, and we're gonna find ways. You know, we're gonna you know be the new Summies dot, etc. I'm not saying I want censorship for the sake of creativity, but I do think that like a rebalancing will do us some good. I guess I know it'll do me some good. In sort of thinking through the ramifications of what seems to be coming down the pike. All right, it was a lovely space, guys. I look forward to these whenever I'm able to join, and thanks everyone for sharing your thoughts and ideas. Love y'all.
Thank you so much, Brother Solar. Appreciate that. Great closing words. And everybody check out episode 54, Doctrine of Awakening. One of my a fast rising, we'll say a very surprisingly high viewed episode. I was very shocked when I clicked on Spotify this morning. So good job, Solar. You did it. You haven't beat Sochki. So you've got a couple, you know, there's a little bit to go, but you know, we're rooting for you. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. Amazing. And I agree with you. I think that is like the question of like the ipsos. Like that is kind of the reconciliation of that, or the rectification of that paradox, like Ram said. It's the individuation of the many. So that's kind of what my whole thing was, is like I didn't want to be a content creator, but I didn't want to be an anti-content creator, because I also knew like I was gonna have to record and like have an aesthetic and have an idea and have overarching ideas, not just for episodes, but for the whole show and for like these spaces. But the spaces were were intentionally metamagical, Dharmic and metamagical at the same time, from space one till now. So yes, this is on an open forum, and maybe we will go to a closed forum. Maybe we will go back to cypherpunk. Maybe that is part of like the Aetherpunk whole series that we touched on, but we didn't necessarily get into. Maybe cypherpunk's a big part of that, and maybe that's okay, and maybe that's very Aeon of the Daughter as well. It's very like resisting the archons without, you know, it's perfectly illegal. There's nothing wrong. And like, you know, like I always tease in the group chat, the idea is to eventually build like a quote unquote temple of the new psychic youth compound. I'm just kidding. Just a joke. But that, yeah, I mean, that there would be something interesting about that, right? Like it's a joke, but John, it's a joke. But, you know, I think the idea is like to have ways to negotiate the sort of like shifting aeons, I think is going to be found a lot more with each other and people who are like-minded. That doesn't mean ideologically identical. I think that was the big error of like the last 20 years was to think that ideological alignment means similar anything. And I think that's probably the least connecting thing about us all is ideological. I think people are just more aligned in so many different ways. It's even hard to maybe articulate, quantify, or define. So I know Monty's been waiting forever. I'm so sorry. And then Matt, and then Joshua.
No, it's never feel like you're leaving me hanging. It's always a pleasure to listen, and also, snaps. Um, it's I just kind of want to address like an overall sentiment. Solar's not here to retort, but I do kind of want to respond to the whole like all art is like born from restraints. Like having boundaries and having rules creates good art. I largely agree with that statement, but at the same time, wouldn't it be nice if they weren't there? I just kind of think it's a very like defeatist and it's a very like negative attitude to take towards like art in general. Is that you need to be stifled, you need to be beaten, you need to be in the corner to produce greatness. I think that, as art of all things should stem from the human experience and making and particularizing the universal instead of what we have right now where you're universalizing the particular. I think that's I said that the wrong way. I say that expression the wrong way every single time. I'm sorry, but basically, I think that why is anonymity good for the internet? First and foremost, anime avatars are indigenous to the internet. Ever since people were given the option to image boards, message boards, etc., they always flock towards a cute picture, something they like, the Punisher logo. Um, and I just kind of think that it's Twitter is such a special thing, and I'm glad I am confident that this is going to be the last place that actually does facial recognition and like verification for ID. We do that for monetization, which is what YouTube should do. But in terms of like Twitter, I, I mean, guys, these are our pen names. These are our journal entries. The mask is just your persona. This is just, your dramatized, stylized version of yourself in your life, and you see how you experience life through your lens. That should never be taken from us. Now, I don't, the lolcow mystic who's seemingly right about everything, Rivellino, as much of a lolcow as he is, has I think one of the most it hits me so hard. He obviously has the mobs attacking him, on the daily for the green lines test, and all of them go and say like post physique, show your face, and all that. And his retort to that was, "I showed you my soul, but you want to see my face." Don't allow the tech overlords to go and turn Twitter into Tinder. Don't make this a meat market. Don't lose everything. We should appreciate the mystery, and we should allow the inner dramatized, stylized self of ours, our best self, the one that we want to show the world, not that the one sees in us. We should be able to put that out and not have to be run off the internet because you have acne or you're fat or you don't abide by conventional beauty standards. If you're LARPing as a white nationalist and you're not that, like I get it, but exceptions are exceptional. But I waste my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. I totally agree. I think that whatever the intentions of the creation of the internet, this is kind of like a place to be relatively free and the ways that we choose. And like I think that with Solarman, I'm not trying to speak for him, Monty, but I think that there has to be a degree of what is considered normative. And as he mentioned at the end, like Tiferet is about harmony, seeking that sort of rectification and balance. That does obviously not mean stringency. And someone who is actually a member of the lodge, I know this is going to surprise some of you, but one of my mutuals who's Hoppa, who I know from Joe, he just tweeted something about Christian, how we'll see like the base Bronze Age people become like Christian schoolmarms. Like, I feel like a lot of the right wing is like that in general. And like, I don't mean in like a way that I'm not saying anyone has to accept degenerate things in public or degenerate ideas or in society even. But what I'm saying is to say something is evil is obviously putting a label on it right away without actually exploring what that thing could be or is. So sometimes it's very unhelpful and actually is counterproductive, right? Like with magic. That's a lot of my story of podcasting, right? Is about magic, is about how magic works, being a metaphysician, explaining reality through Kabbalah, through Tantra. So a lot of people initially, this is not like a very interesting story, but a lot of people were very resistant at first to this approach. It's not like I wouldn't say, I mean, I might say maybe in a high-minded way that I semi-pioneered the approach, but I definitely was an innovator. Okay, innovator in the space, we'll say, of this. Of doing a kind of metafictional approach, like Tracy Twyman, like to shout out Zach, like that's sort of what I did. I lifted ideas, not her, particularities. I lifted just the ideas, the metaphysical ideas that I thought were interesting using my own, discriminating awareness, my own discernment. So what I'm trying to say is, like, I encountered a lot of resistance against people who were like, magic is evil, magic is bad. But then you see people are all doing magic. Everybody who has certain degrees of success, there's a way to propel yourself forward. You can't use it as a foundation. You use it to propel, Hode-like, not Yesodic. You use it to propel yourself into higher positionalities. That's nothing wrong with that. But then why are you saying that it's bad? Why are you saying it's of the Jays? Why are you saying it's of, there's a lot of klipas in front of magic. And I'm not saying it's like we're in like this Puritan regime where people are like, oh, you can't practice magic. It's obviously, as Solar said, it's all here. It's all on the internet. Everything that you could possibly want. Tantras, grimoires, contemporary left-hand path text. It's all a PDF, even a Google search away, as bad as Google is. That's so interesting, right? That it's all so accessible. It's all so in front of us. So what do we use our discernment on? I think that also goes along with like the broader mass media culture. Like I've said this before, but I don't watch anything. That's like, I watch anime. I watch some contemporary Chinese things like swordplay dramas, etc. But very little is like new media. Like I'm not completely saturated. I'm in no way saturated by new media. But maybe the timeline is part of my media ecosystem. And I would argue that it is. Posting is like a chaos magic. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And it's chaos magic in the best of ways because you're being syncretic. You're bringing in ideas that you see other people posting, but maybe you're not even posting for that. One of the things that I became notorious for very early was that I would post for myself, which meant speaking for myself, which meant not counter signaling anyone because I don't really give a shit what anyone else said. Now I have to care a little more because I obviously represent more voices, but in a way, or more identities of choice. But I have to sort of moderate it in that way. But it's not that I'm moderating what I want to say. I just express it differently. And I think this is also something Joseph was talking about. It's like, it's not that how do we avoid censorship or how do we get around it or how do we remix it? Because maybe we can use, and I think this is my last point, is what Solar was saying, is how do we use the challenges, the obstacles, seemingly impossible mountains yet to cross? How do we utilize these moments to maybe they're karmic, maybe they're dharmic, maybe it's up to us. And so we have to figure out what we're going to do with these things in front of us. And I think that to sort of remix language also means to go back and see what worked and why. And maybe that is kind of a rectification of English and rectification of, for the Norse bros, for the runes, for the mystery at least, because, I don't really care about the Norse thing other than like just a general interest. Like I care, but I just generally, But I think like a rectification of the mystery, maybe the deeper meaning of what runes is. Obviously, runes having the dualistic meaning, which I obviously like, but the deeper meaning, maybe the secret meaning, which is mystery. So, like, maybe these obstacles are just constant reminders to be in remix. I don't know. An idea. Okay, Matt, Joshua, and then Joseph. Okay.
Again, very, very interesting. So a lot of stuff here. First of all, indeed, Jin, like how can you benefit from anything that happens, right? Even if it seems not that great. So for example, since the beginning of all those crazy, like quote unquote bans or like people starting to, like I got it on Twitter for some reason. I'm not in the UK, but for some reason some tweets were not appearing because of the fucking changes. And then okay, great. Now I get to, you know, freaking install a VPN that I was lacking for a long time. So good. Now I crossed one check. And then I got reminded, oh, wait a second. If they're going to start doing this stuff in Spotify and YouTube and so on, eventually, maybe I won't be able to listen to the music that I like. So, well, guess what? I'm going to fucking pirate everything again, like I used to do. And it's going to be mine forever. That's it. So if they don't do something like this, imagine they could just block everything in one day and it's going to be over. So at least they're giving us time to prepare. You know, they're saying, oh, yeah, look at it, you know, in a couple of days, maybe, yeah. So for the time being, that's what I can do. I can pirate everything and it's whatever. And a very interesting thing also from Solar, Monty, and Jin as well, this idea of, you know, utilizing the resources. So we briefly talked about this last spaces, the meme of like Minecraft on creative and you destroy everything because you have all the resources, and then when you're playing Minecraft on survival mode, then you start to create beautiful things and so on, because again, you're limited in the resources. So you won't be spending a lot of time doing like seemingly nothing because, well, for starters, you gotta, for example, eat and stuff. So you need to use some time to go and get and fetch stuff to eat, and you need some time to prepare yourself a home to protect yourself from the monsters and so on. So the game is different, but it doesn't mean that somebody with ordered, or order is not the best word, but someone with a goal in mind and a clear mind wouldn't use the creative mode, so the infinite resources, to create the most beautiful things ever, which in survival mode would probably be like impossible, because let's say you cannot fly, you cannot have infinite stuff, and so on and so on, and you cannot use some blocks. And it is interesting because there's this video about from Alan Watts that I like a lot. He goes like it something like, suppose you could dream any dream and so on, and he goes to explain this idea that yeah, if you could dream about anything, again, if you're in creative mode, probably you would begin by doing everything that you want to do, right? So all the craziest stories, all the beautiful things you could listen and see, and so on and so on. But at some point, this gets like boring. It's like, okay, like where's the challenge? Where's something that I can grow and beat and so on and get better? And again, you maybe start to have some of those stories. Again, the hero saving the princess from the dragon, or whatever it is, right? All the stories that get repeated and repeated. Which brings me to another point, which is, but Monty was talking about this in the beginning as well, like people recycling the stories. Because it seems to me that in this simulator, everything just gets recycled because, well, it works. Like if it works for 10,000 years, why the heck would you just like, I'm thinking with the big labels in mind, right? The big enterprise and so on. Like if people are still falling for the same movie, like literally, I think the Fantastic Four is like what the fourth, I think now the fifth or whatever version is like the fucking same movie, same stories. They just change they update a little bit the effects and change the guys, and okay, people still gonna watch it. It's like, what the fuck? It's like a kid. When you're a kid, you watch the movie, okay, it ends, you start it again, hoping it will change, but it's not going to change the same movie. Like, what the heck are you still watching it? And if it works, well, props to those guys. You know, may make more Fantastic Four movies, I guess. But it goes to show in yourself what you can do, right? Get what works for you. Maybe don't do it forever, because that's also something we end up doing. Like our character here, which I completely agree, when it is anonymous in the internet, it lets you be more open, let's say, because, well, a lot of the times you are closing yourself, and I'm guilty of this as well. Like, I used to think, I'm not going to post this because maybe somebody from work will see it and so on, because I use my name and my face. But the thing is, okay, that's something I'm blocking myself. I don't need to block this. And guess what? When I started to not block this, when I started to be, quote unquote, myself, or the character that I want to be, right? The Matt Mora, people at work started seeing like, oh, what the fuck? This guy does tarot and astrology and whatever. And I started to have more interesting conversations, and conversations that I wanted to have, because I was just, again, talking about the shit that I want to talk about anyway. So I understood, okay, well, why the heck was I putting myself, like, why the heck was I filtering myself? If, again, it was supposed to fit, but then when I was fitting, people wouldn't like me more anyway, and I wouldn't like like to be there and be that person that I wasn't. So everyone was losing, and it was like not great. And so my point before this was, we have the characters here, right? And we get lazy to change them. Like, when we are kids, it's easier. In 1 week you're gonna be an astronaut, and the other week you want to be a rock star, and whatever, you change so often, and that's completely fine. Again, I spoke about it on the last spaces about the alchemical belts, which is, again, this idea that you go up and down and working them and so on. So it's fine, you can change. But when we start to get older, it's like, oh, I know this character for like 10, 15 years. Why would I change it? Every time I wake up, eat the same stuff, go to the same places, do everything the same. And yeah, sure, if you don't get bored, I guess go for it. But I guess the most fun of this game is to really be able to change and adapt. Again, go in flux, like Jin says. That's a very nice way to put it. Because the more you do it, the more you can experience things that you would like, and that would like be good for experience here. And then again, you play along. Maybe you like this or not, and you go back and you change and you adapt. And again, to me, that's the most beautiful thing that we can do here.
Fuck yeah, I agree with all of that. Be in flux, and also don't be fixed by quote unquote problems. We have to, that's what the Anne of the Daughter is about like a solution oriented, pragmatic sort of reorientation. So maybe like this is like the nod to Evolar or traditionalism, is like the return to quote unquote, horrible word, but it's the one that everybody knows, spirituality and religion. But it's not necessarily like trad life, right? Like that's what we're talking about. Maybe it's a return to the primordial religion. Maybe that's what the whole idea is. It's like a return to the, as I like to say now, the American Dharma. So I'm going to start using that, by the way, just so you know. That will become a thing moving forward from these spaces. So Joshua or Joseph, I think Joshua and Joseph. Okay, Joshua and Joseph. Yeah, let's do that. Joshua, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. So I have a few notes I'll just mention first about the one I have for solar. I was hoping he would be on when I got to mention this, but I got to hone that a little bit. So I think when he was talking about having boundaries and rules, it does help with creativity sometimes, I think, because it's like a training of sorts. A train can't go anywhere without the tracks, right? So it has to have boundaries in order to go somewhere. And I think that's kind of the idea that maybe he was going with. I'm not sure. But also what came to my mind was the myth of Pegasus emerging from the body of Gorgon, who turned people to stone when they looked at her, right? Or from her gaze. And so I think that too is like a good way to kind of capture that too, is that the beautiful Pegasus, the winged horse, the pure white horse, was trapped within the Gorgon, so to speak, in a sense, and was released upon the death of that Klippa, so to speak, which was the Gorgon. Because she had lived so long, she probably had a noble purpose at one time, right? But has become this villainous being of sorts. And so in a way, I almost wonder if she was grateful for having been released from her coil. But it's that labor kind of associated with the chiseling away of the stone. Very Masonic, of course. The same approach is to take the rough stone and turn it into a perfect ashlar. And so, your daily walk's kind of analogous to that, right? Because we're the great work, after all. And I think that relates to the pineal gland work done to maintain it. It's like in the Christian community, it's like, oh, once saved, always saved. It's like, I don't know, you might want to maintain that saved. Don't take it for granted, right? I can't think of a more horrible thing than to lose that communion with spirit, So you should, I think, maintain that gratefulness, right? But I think that there's some attributes associated with the divinity, the authority that you gain, when maybe hitting that crown, so to speak, is that, a king has the right to privacy in a sense, right? So I think America's kind of predicated upon everybody being like a king or queen of their respective castles and having these inalienable rights, right? Like to privacy and, being able to own land. And so when you zoom out, a king, as it were, has a domain, and that's the extent of his influence, right? So, we build fences around our yards in a similar kind of way to how the tracks might function for the train. And so maybe in that way, it's like, well, I might own 600 acres or whatever, which I don't. I wish I did. But I only fence in this much because I can only do this much. And so I think that's where tyrants really fail, is where they go beyond the scope of their influence. And that's why tyrannical governments fail, and why things like the censorship, I think, will eventually fail too, is because they cannot maintain the control that they're to do. And if the if the AIs are any indication, I think that it'll be like a Frankenstein's monster kind of thing, where every AI pretty much turns on them. So we already know how that's probably going to out. But one of the other things I wanted to mention real quick was the whole concept of your name being associated with like your ba, your reputation. And so there's also that ineffable quality relating to divinity, that it's very common for the gods to divulge their true name. They only give you like an attribute or characteristic or some type of attribute, and so it's never in its fullness. And so when they force us to divulge that, because after all, everybody's kind of like in an aspect, right? Online, maybe they adopt a persona or however it might be, like William Birkin, for instance. So, but that's not the totality of who I am, right? But forcing one to divulge that digital identity, now they have your your name, just like in those stories where if such and such learned the name of a god, well, now they had control of them, right? So I think there's something inherent about our divinity. Like, we really shouldn't, even if we don't fully exercise our right to privacy. Well, what do you have to hide? Well, it doesn't matter if I have anything to hide, because the government has no business being in my fence, And I think that's kind of fundamental to the whole sovereignty argument. And I think that's true for everybody. Like the most Malkuth Maxine thing to do, I think, is own a piece of property and put a rock at the center of it, and that be your throne, so to speak, and be the king of your land. And one of the things I would like to add is that I think migration, as it were, that we're experiencing today, largely is weakening our connection to the land, and maybe whatever spirits or spirit that governs over that land. And so you become a foreigner in a different land. The Bible kind of characterizes stuff like that as spiritual activity. And so sometimes if you're living in like an area that maybe isn't vibing with you, that might be an issue. I'm not sure. But, anyway, I feel like I've rambled on, but I just wanted to share some of those thoughts.
No, that was really great. Thank you so much, Joshua. I think that is very interesting, given that we may not even identify with the same political categories. I personally consider myself post-political in a way now, or maybe just meta-political in the sense that, like, I think that this is all achievable. Like, everything that Joshua and everyone else has talked about is all achievable. There are degrees of, like, sovereignty, liberty, all those things, like, all those great American things. Like, yeah, I think it's all achievable to a degree. I think that it is kind of like the Aeon of the Daughter is like the psychic Aeon. So, like, people, like, say no if they're presented with, like, a, right? Like, what is an angle? A greater than or a less than? So, like, where do you put your attention? Into the single point, like the arrow that's going to respond? Meaning, like, your mental attention, your psychic attention, even. Like, does it matter about Sydney Sweeney? No. That's, like, the most astroturfed campaign you could ever imagine in your life. I mean, it is, like, classic. It is classic social media. It's like they clearly paid blue check influencers to say it's good, and it clearly paid blue check influencers to say it's bad. And then they all can discuss that, and then we have to be subject to it for weeks. And it doesn't fucking matter, and nobody fucking cares. That's total inorganicness of, like, what we see. And I think that the whole idea is like, we are so much more fertile. Like, our ideas are so much better than even the shit that they remix. And we do see this. We see a lot of people on sort of like these indie print press. Obviously, everybody knows that because I've said it like a million times, that Kelby and David were on my show. The episodes just haven't dropped yet, but it's coming. And so, like, it is cool to see, like, people who are actually, like, concretizing their own work, and whether it's hard or not hard, or difficult or not difficult. And there's others. There's clearly others. There's, like, AppCon. They're doing, like, their own thing, and all these other people that are, it's about. I think the most American thing we can do, when I was thinking about this pre-space, is, like, we can be entrepreneurs. Maybe that is like maybe that is like the hyphenated American. The true hyphenated American is like the entrepreneur American, rather than being, trapped in the corporate klipa. Because we're saying that the corporations are decaying, they're ashen, they're of dust. But yes, the dragon is gonna flail at the end, like they always do. That's how it works. Every story, like Matt was saying. We remix things, like, things are remixed for a reason. Yeah, and this is a aeon of remix, but it's remix of the high IQ ideas, sometimes the secret ideas, with the also accessible ones, which is why I'm borrowing this from Matt, but, like, why I love the idea of pop Kabbalah. Because it's like, why not use the fucking hermeneutic that is Kabbalah to then teach people this is a hermeneutic that is also called Kabbalah, but you can understand it using the fucking anime, to go back to the series that Monty and I did, and that I've done with Joshua, and that I've done with Chris. So the reality is like, or like, and shout out Sachki, obviously, of course, for Sailor Moon posting. And it's the exact same thing. It's like, let's just talk about the things that we have right now that are actually relevant to people, instead of inventing these muckhang identities from, the past, and then trying to, like, rehabilitate them. Like, there's room for a dark hero. There's room for a good hero. There's room for both of those sort of categories of being. And I think that that's also what Solar was kind of trying to say, or maybe he did say it, is the idea of boundaries and limitations. This is good in a way, because then you get the outsider art. You'll get people who are on, and this is what I was trying to say about being interested in thresholds and liminalities, is that you will always get people who are on the periphery who produce interesting things. But you also have to have a center. It doesn't have to be a commercial center. And I think this is where art has really gone wrong, because it was not always like this. Was not always so speculative, wasn't so commercial. I mean, yes, there's always been art that's very commercial, and that's fine, and there's no problem with that. But, like, the way it's become speculative, sort of real estate almost, for very wealthy people, or hedge funds and corporations, I think that is very problematic, because then it's like, what is the modes of cultural production? Well, if it's just money, that's fine, but that's what we have. We have the corporate slop, we have the AI slop, and we have the, timeline slop, the discursive sort of Twitter is the place. Like, to shout out what Monty said, Twitter is like the carnal ground of the word salad. I mean, it's one of the only places where, other than like the forums, and RIP to those, and I'm not saying they're gone forever, but they're gone in nature. And so Twitter is kind of like the last carnal ground on the internet, outside of those like private forums and stuff, that people get to be discursive with word and still image. It's very difficult to do it on other platforms. So, we have to, while we're inside the stone dragon, as Joshua very cleverly said, and remember, the horse and the dragon are actually the same character. And it's very interesting seeing Cassandra, because Cassandra obviously has Chibiusa as her PFP. Well, this is the transformation from the Gorgon into the Pegasus, the epinoia, the thought, the single pointedness, her original spark of light, you could say. Very Sophia. Chibiusa transforms Pegasus into the prince. So, really interesting. Continuation, a remix of the same story, but perpetuated and brought into the present and the future. It's interesting. I also want to shout out Vanessa. She keeps popping in and out. Vanessa is a really cool person, and she has a tie-dye clothing line. So if you're interested in it, she sent them to the Rejects. So a lot of you'll see, if you watch Rejects, you'll see sometimes they'll wear the tie-dye stuff. That's all from Vanessa. She has a cool Instagram, and she's been a really cool in terms of like promoting my personal stuff, as well as anytime I'm on Reject, she always makes sure to know that she might not be watching for me, but she mentions that she particularly likes seeing me as part of the panel. So I have to just say that I thank you so much, Vanessa. Appreciate it. And also, this is your therapy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it for the retweet. And I see the follow. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, I know, Joseph, you've been waiting forever, and Joshua, you've been waiting forever. Joseph, please go ahead, and then Joshua.
It's totally good, Jed. Everybody has like already. I feel like I'm reiterating what we've talked about, but it's going what Solar said, what Monty said, and Eugen and Joshua. We have problems or challenges or obstacles or restraints, or we have like complete freedom. And but the interesting place is the liminalities, right? It's the interface between the two. The gestalt, between figure and ground. It's the being. What did I say? We can be totally infinitely free, or we can be totally constrained, and those things are going to get old rather quickly. But the place where the inhale turns into the exhale, and the exhale turns again into the inhale, is the interesting point of transformation. And that interface, we need that because that creates the friction, that creates the, as Frater Singapura Hiram would know, tapas, right? Tapas, discipline, right? The heat of transformation. And so this is where something can generate and grow from. So I find that place to be super fascinating. So it is a discipline to, you have to have the free sometimes, you have to have the right mix of restraint sometimes, and how these things come together makes, beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. Sorry, not Joshua. Joseph. You know how I'm bad at the J names. We all have J names, all the boys. So it's hard sometimes. There's Solar is the only one. So he was the smart one among us, because there's two M's. Joshua, Joseph, and Jen, obviously. And we have Mike. And both Mikes, really, because both Mikes are co-hosts if they choose. And so we have Matt, Monty, and Mike, X2, Jin, Joshua, and Joseph, and then Solar. So Solar's the special snowflake in this equation. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I think another contemporary story that kind of brings this back into focus is, although it was admittedly a honeypot of sorts, the T app that got people to go on and upload their licenses and their face. I mean, that's pretty much what YouTube's asking you to do, right? So there's a lot of faith too being put in corporations to safeguard your data, regardless of what their, noble reason is. And, of course they always target something that's acceptable first with some type of emergent technology. Like, oh, we're going to use it to go after illegal immigrants or criminals, or we're trying to protect children. When all along, if that were really true, they would have been more aggressive with the Epstein thing, to bring up another story. They clearly don't care about children. The real goal is control, of course. And so I do like the idea of where the liminal space, as it were, is kind of like the roadside, if you will. It's like the specific ecology that it kind of goes alongside infrastructure, because after all, even the space, is like the modern version of the freaking chat rooms that you could find on the phone lines, as I've mentioned before in previous spaces. And so, I think there's always going to be this punk element that just always resists. And it's just that as the generations kind of roll on, what is punk is sometimes very different, because becoming like trad or whatever, and, back to the land, I mean, that was passe and so phony and not cool, but now it's like resisting what is normal. So it's funny how cycles occur with humans, I think. But so I think that we're kind of seeing that micro epoch type of rotation, what some people call the fourth turning, seems to occur like on an 80-year cycle. And so I think a lot of the slop and stuff that we're seeing too is a reflection of that turn that we're in. And so maybe this added structure or discipline that comes from like the tyrant will force us to kind of evolve in a way. And I have to admit, it's even sparked creativity in me, as Matt and I have been talking about ways to kind of navigate this new world by, trying to figure out ways around this stuff, And so, and one more thing, I've tried to have a server before in the past, but you're bottlenecked by your own technical knowledge. And so, it was hard to get it to go anywhere, because it was just so hard to assemble a team of people that knew how to do things like that. But, the visions that kind of had in my head was to try and like have a place where, almost like a TV network in a sense, where all creators can just kind of share their stuff, like a YouTube of sorts, really. But eventually we're going to have like pirate radio type places on the internet, and it's going to be the freaking lines again, And so you're going to have to know where to find them, and that type of thing will be where these micro cultures are kind of growing arc, like mushrooms or whatever. And so I think there's like a very mercurial thing to that, because after all, roads and phone lines, they kind of run parallel to one another, and they carry the message of king, messages of whomever. So if we are sovereign in a way and kings, who knows, maybe there'll be some type of messaging service that, like the Pony Express, because you can have lo-fi radios, for instance, to transmit signals. It's like a mesh network. And so I think what we'll start to see are ways to kind of get around this sort of thing. Like there's going to be a black market, so to speak. The black market is anytime there's a prohibition, it becomes part of the black market, and it just runs parallel to the existing market. And it's just like laws just don't work, because then criminals, as it were, are going to do the thing anyway, just like with gun laws, for instance. And so I think it's just silly that they're trying to legislate this type of thing. But, the quote that kind of came to my mind was, I don't know who said it, but it's there's no sweetness without struggle. And so we're in like a stable environment, so to speak. And so maybe this, coming panopticon stuff will kind of whip us into shape. And it's like a very Saturnian kind of vibe, I feel like. It's like here to train the vine. So, finding ways to navigate that. And it's very reminiscent of like the ancient Christians that had to hide underground to meet, or Mithraic cults that did the same. And Cicada 3301 of course comes to mind, like being able to navigate this space without being noticed. And the term that comes to mind is gray man. And for today's case, I actually dressed in gray, and I wanted to bring that up. But anyway, I feel like I've talked enough.
I'm actually wearing my gray Bape shark shorts right now. It's quite funny. Obviously a black shirt, but I'm just saying, short wise, yes, also gray. So maybe we were on the same psychic vibe for that. Thank you so much, Joshua. I'm gonna let Monty go, but I want to say one thing: is that the maiden rides the dragon in this aeon, which is also us, because it's the aeon of man. So we get to decide like what we're gonna do with the technologies, and maybe it is like return to lo-fi. And maybe that's something even Sochki kind of has been talking about, like this sort of like running AI on like these late 90s, even binary. You can even run AI on binary platforms. It's really interesting. If you really look at the things, like, why aren't we talking about things like this? Why aren't people talking about this in the AI space? Like, it's very, like, sell you a bloated corpse of nothing, of bullshit, really. And really, there is interesting things. There are interesting stories. There are interesting things to talk about. And also, I wanted to say this, and I hope Joseph likes this, but I agree, buy material culture as much as you will and you want and you can afford, and like, yeah, material culture, great. But I also want to posit this idea, and I'm not the first, but I'm just going to posit it. The digital is the archive. Like, they're not going to delete themselves, right? They're not going to delete like the potentiality of what it all is, in the sense of like, you can have hard drives, you can have like all your, like, I have all my anime on fucking hard drives. I have all of it, like all my Chinese cinema movies, like I have it all categorized, organized, like very archival, very library science, like it's all by country, by date, by genre. And I just think that you can also consider that. So like Matt said, like, learn to be a pirate. I'm not like condoning the pirates, like, but it's an interesting idea. Okay, Monty, please go ahead, and I apologize.
I mean, everything that was just shared there, I can't like echo it enough. It was like a dog like becoming alert and like shooting its tail out. Like there's so much red meat on everything that everyone just said. Now, and forgive me for sounding like a bug man here, but I do legitimately think that the future of Twitter, especially, TikTok is proof of concept. Now, unless everything becomes TikTok, Twitter has the X, whatever, has, and honestly, it would earn the title of X, and like we should stop calling it Twitter if they do this, but become a like video platform where you can do pirate radio, where you can go and have these like 300 follower like video editors going and producing these exquisite memes with that are so hyper specific and hyper mean. Like, comes with such a creativity. There really is just like a spark of like, all of us are artists, and in the Maslow's hierarchy, the government's actually doing a really good job of making sure that we have like food and shelter. Like, there's so much room for like the mind to grow and express itself, and I think we're seeing that right now. And I just think that like a pirate video is just so important. And it's as far as I'm concerned, we can't record things in books anymore. Digital is the record. Now, until we go and find an EMP proof way of storage of knowledge, it's the best we have. And as we're kind of seeing the walls close in when it comes to censorship on the internet, yeah, we're not Bronze Age perverts. We should be digital age perverts. We should be pirates. We should be stealing. We should be, as long as the Pirate Bay is still online, we should be like crashing the servers with how much we're downloading and how much traffic. I just think that now more than ever, we really need to like understand how good we have it, and don't let, us just be like beaten by like, well, it's all gonna go away anyway. Seize the moment. Like, you see the writing on the walls, like let your gut take over. And I mean, this is the whole point of like all of these talks. This is the whole point of like, Dharma. Self-discipline and practice yields good results. If you sit on the sidelines and just go like, what, everything sucks, I always lose, you will always lose because that's what you got really good at. You should be practicing like discipline, good mental, and just lock the fuck in, guys.
I mean, that's where 100% that's where it's fucking at. Like, lock the fuck in. And the thing is like doomerism is wrong. It is actually wrong. It's like Monty was very correct to point this out. It really is wrong. You're projecting not only your will, even though you might not encapsulate it as that. I'm not saying for anyone or you as specific. Anyone, like posters who post about like the worst outcomes. Yes, I think it's necessary to like discuss that maybe. But there's also like a point of where you're projecting that. You don't want to project that as a speculative future, right? You want to restrict that. So maybe there's also a different way to like sort of reorganize, recategorize, remix those ideas. Not that they aren't dire necessarily, but also you're also trying to bring it into your like the viewer's control, the witness's perception. So like it's all about you. It really is like Anne of the narcissist, I guess, but not because hopefully this will not turn into TikTok. And if Elon was half the anarchist that he likes to pretend to be, he would let us do fucking pirate radio and like continue the spaces and let us have like like the 300 follower accounts that you see that get like 100,000 likes. Like, yeah, that's AstroTurf. Come on, give me a break. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but it is funny. It is funny in a way because you also can believe, you also can remix it maybe in another way, and you can say, I can do it too. I Anon can do it too. I don't know. Interesting. I'm sorry, Monty. I wasn't trying to tease you. I was just it always is interesting when you see these like very normie mundane opinions get like 300,000 likes, and I'm like, oh, like how did that happen? So I don't know, some
No,
food for the
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to apologize real quick. I threw something up on the Jumbotron. Wrong chat. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. So it is of that time where we will begin to close. Is there any co-host who has any last words or final words, or they want to sort of stake their positionality, stake their point? Okay, Joshua, please go ahead.
Yeah, earlier we were talking about Hollywood and how it was kind of getting sequelitis, is what I like to call it, where it's just reskinning Kedu. I think what is real going on there is they found a formula that's kind of like archetypal in nature and like tarot in nature. So you could even like basically pull certain tarot out of the deck and lay it down on any movie and pretty much see like over and over how it's written. And I think where they've really erred now is they're pushing the boundaries of that so far that those cards don't relate as strongly as they once did. So it's almost as if the productions themselves have become clipotic or klipas. It's like they've become negative archetypes, or it's like, well, wouldn't it be better just to create something new rather than trying to take what's maybe natural and pervert it or twist it? And I think that's where the error is, because of the lack of creativity. It's become very difficult, I think, for originality to spring from these endeavors. And so I just think that I just wanted to kind of highlight how Hollywood, of course, I know that's somewhat cliche to even mention nowadays, but that is the type of wand you would use, in some rituals. So I think there is a type of spellcraft involved with how society's been manipulated and kind of led down the garden path, so to speak. And, um, I think what we're going to see is a renaissance of sorts. We kind of see the rumblings of that with the screenwriters guilds kind of uproar, and then of course later comes this anti-AI movement and things like that. So I think that we'll see the fringes and the liminal spaces kind of emerging. almost how a forest fire will come through and then afterwards new life springs up. So I think some of these things that we're going to see are going to be very beautiful in a way because they're going to be novel and new, or maybe, cropping up on the next turn, as it were.
Absolutely. That was really well said. Thank you so much, Joshua. I agree. I agree that the thresholds of those, the thresholds of True North, you could say, they hold all the secrets. So thank you, obviously, all the co-hosts, all the listeners, all the lodge members, and of course, this is a Plus Ultra space. We've come together in synthesis to make fucking magic, to be the Quicksilver Surfers. And I agree, Joshua. They recycle archetypes because they're drawing from the, I'm not anti the Silver and Golden Age Marvel and DC using these kind of hermetic, chemetic, Kabbalistic archetypes. There's nothing wrong with that. That's human inclination to use these Enochian, um, Adam Kadmon, Sethian figures and kind of project them into the world. That's what it should do. That's what a hermeneutic is, a way to understand the world. So there is no better, perhaps, understanding of the world than these magical kinds of stories. And you could say even maybe that comics are kind of the American piranhas. It's kind of an interesting way to think of it. But like with the Indian piranhas, there is also a problem, a klipa, or many misunderstandings, at least, that arise from their presentation, because they are presented as a greater outside story, a great struggle between the Manichaean forces of good and evil. But really, truly, those battles and that struggle really is about consciousness, and it's really inside yourself. So the big problem with those is and so Marvel, because people sort of are, I don't want to say the normie is depressed necessarily, but there's definitely a kind of, many people have talked about it, like the dumbing down of the normie and the NPC, and we call them all these pejorative names, etc., etc. I don't really like that, that, but okay, we're saying the normie. So they're watching these things and they're projecting themselves into the characters. This is very what Joshua was talking about. This is like part of the spell. You have to be in dialectical relationship. You have to be almost in consent. So if you're sitting down to watch a Marvel movie, like, the one thing I don't like is I don't like purity testing in any way. Like, if you enjoy a Marvel movie, like, if you genuinely want to go see something, I'm not going to say anything. I won't stop you. I'll be like, yeah, cool. Like, no problem. I'm not going to school marm you. But I think it's really important to say that, to acknowledge that you are also in consent of that spell, the consent of that magic. I mean, that's 100% true. I do think that we have to turn our backs. Maybe a very good klipa of Hesed. You have to turn your back to the things that you reject. I think that is true personally, and I think that you see these kinds of low attempts, or like more inorganic attempts, to revitalize certain modes of culture that are in and of themselves also klipas. In and of themselves, sort of decaying vessels. And I'm using klipas in a more contemporary, present tense sense, but also like in a slightly more negative than I would usually emphasize. Just kind of like the decayed husks. And so you see things that are supposedly perennial actors. Okay, Alain Delon. This is a perfect example of this. You take a kind of vessel, people don't know who he is. Millennials didn't know who he is. Only cinemaphiles would really understand who he is. Lovers of French cinema, which of course exists. Of course, it's like a niche, like right wing bro culture. Of course, that's true. But in the broader culture, people don't know who he is, right? But then you kind of re-mythologize, create a neo mythology around this figure who people don't really know. And it kind of puts things back into flux, right? oh, he was bisexual, he was a womanizer, he got this woman pregnant while they were having an affair, and he was having an affair with this other woman. It kind of puts all those archetypes into the aether. Says these ideas are the center, or in this case, the based right wing. It's interesting, right? It's just interesting how ideas get disseminated. I think that's a lot of the ideas of runes as well. It's like in the dust, in the aggregate. It's like, what do you draw from it? What do you draw from the air itself? Well, as I've said, in alchemy, you only want the metallic particulates, because in those are reconstitutable. But in the ash itself, that only can be compost, you could say, for the garden. It's interesting. Okay, Joshua, please go ahead, and then I really will do room shoutouts and close.
Yes, and I'll be very brief. But I would be remiss if I did not mention something very cool that happened to me actually yesterday, which was Thor's Day. There's a gas station I go into, and there's a guy that works in there. And, I noticed he had a Thor's hammer or whatever. And so I always greet him and talk to him about his religion and stuff. And because I always greet him that way, and I'm very down with him, I find his religion interesting. He shared with me the other day when I was in there. He's like, "Hey, I got a tattoo. Check it out." And so he was showing me on the back of his calf, he had gotten an Odin's compass, with cliche perhaps, yes, but it meant something to him, and he told me how what it meant to him and all. But then he also had two runes on either side of the roots, and that's what really captured my attention. And so I posted those in the underneath the chat here. It was Jeru and Dagas, which is the J and D, and it refers to like fruitfulness, the cycles of the seasons. And so I think winter is kind of like necessary for these trees and plants to die and then to come back fruitful again. And so again, I think that's somewhat analogous to what we're kind of going through in a sense, is like we go through these periods of cultural winter, so to speak, when times do get tough, but then it makes us stronger, right, and more resilient. And it reminds me of, to bring it back to gardening real quick, is how you can harden plants by allowing them some exposure to cold weather from time to time, and it makes them a lot more hardy and strong and healthy. So I just wanted to mention that I had a real life rune experience, and he told me going out the door, he said, some people think runes are magic. Well, I don't, but I still draw them every day, and it usually summarizes what's going on that day. He's like, to me, it's quite remarkable. And I was like, well, that's really no different than a tarot card, and so I think in that way, there's probably a way to map the runes out on the Sephiroth. I know that'll be like my lifelong endeavor to do that. But anyway, I just wanted to share that weird coincidence.
Well, I mean, that is the perfect way to sort of close out the space, right? Like, words are a magical act. Speaking words, writing fiction, writing nonfiction in a beautiful way. Like, anyone can do AI slop, like, crypto bro jargon, or like entrepreneur, like start your small. And I'm entrepreneur maxing, I'm pro that very much, but I'm not. There are monetized creators who are not really entrepreneurial, but they'll say, oh, the 10 best businesses for whatever in 2025, and like, okay, that seems very multi-level marketing. But I'm not dissing it. All those commercial things are very American, and it is part of the culture. It just is. And hustling door to door, the vacuum salesman, the Mary Kay, even the snake oil salesman. That's all very American. And I'm not even against snake oil salesmen, because sometimes maybe that also can have a secret meaning. So, Vanessa, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. We did shout you out. I saw that you were coming in and out, and I will be on Rejects later. So, thank you so much, Vanessa. And so, with that, I'm just going to thank my co hosts. I have a live in 15 minutes. I'm sorry. I've been taking a break from doing those and trying to focus on our spaces and the show. And so I appreciate it. And thank you so much to all of you and all the co hosts. So I apologize. I'm not going to let them plug tonight, but Follow Matt, follow Monty, follow Joshua if he lets you, follow Joseph, and follow Solar. All saints, all amazing. I don't want to call them boys, but they're amazing people. I'm very blessed to know them all. Lucky for whatever, however temporary, however peripheral, however in this crazy online world that we live in, with shifting allegiances, and if we're like me, considering ourselves post-political, like who are we realigning with? Well, I'm not really going to realign with people based on the old preconceptions, right? I want to align with people more based on like where they're going. Like I think this is what Monty even was kind of speaking about, like people who kind of have negative visions for the world, negative politics. That's not the way of the world. The way of the world forward, I think, is positivistic ideas, building and creating the future for ourselves, as well as in the punk way, Joshua. I think that is the ethos, the true ethos, not the tranny libtard way, but the punk in the resistant to being contained, to being siloed, to being, as something Joseph said, like, what is the identity? The identity is the American. And then we can, and maybe our regionalism, and we build outwards from there. Like Matt was saying, like, like maybe maybe there is no greater identity. Maybe that is. Maybe it's just like our regionality and then American. Because that is like, we live on the turtle's back. It's very magic. That story is very magic. That we all know that story is very magic. That became popularized in 2008 during the No Dapple protests. Isn't that interesting? It's a very specific, plain story if you understand the Native American cosmology. The Native American cosmologies, excuse me, nobody get mad at me. I know it's very pluralistic, much more than we are taught, much more than is said in the zeitgeist. So to have that very specific OG Cree / Mohawk story of the Turtle Island. And we also do live on our map does look like a turtle. And that is the Brahmaloka. And then also to shout out Brother Moonblade, he shared what the Sikh word for Canada is, or the Sikh word for North America. I can't remember, I'm sorry. But it was very close to the Mohawk word for Canada. So I was like, fuck, that's so interesting. Hey, Nick. So I am closing out and I'm coming on to Rejects in like 5 minutes. So we didn't forget. I've shouted it out multiple times. So that is happening. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Matt Murrah, Kabbalah, Tarot, Astrology. Thank you so much. Joshua the Branch, the veteran podcaster, Chris from King of Cups, who's now a lodge member, works with him, and he's doing something with Mario from Symbolic Studies. Obviously, episode coming out on my show. Thank you so much, Joshua. Joseph Reed, McLuhan Chair of the Grey Lodge. Thank you so much for coming and tolerating our crazy, wild, Quicksilver Surfer ways. I know you kind of love it too. Probably it's the embodying the best of Gen X in the millennial irony culture, maybe you could say, with the Zoomer influences, obviously, like Rom, who thinks we're all Ultrans. Okay, so Moonblade, thank you so much for coming. One of my favorite mutuals. Really appreciate you, and just keep posting in the ways that you do. Nick from the Occult Rejects, everybody follow Occult Rejects on YouTube. Obviously, I'm part of the Quorum of 12, or there might be 13. Might be 13 with Nick. But anyways, I'm part of the Quorum of 12, and I will be live later, so I hope we're live. I think we are, but thank you guys so much. Thank you, Nick, for coming. Appreciate it. Always supportive. Avi, Bold Brave Free, thank you so much. Appreciate you, Lodge member. Can't have the spaces really without you. Appreciate it. Ashley, Think Change Repeat, Union of Unknowns, and Knights of the Storm with Jason Barker. Thank you guys. Thank you so much, Ashley, and your episode will be out tonight. Appreciate it. Episode 49, Cult Fiction. Okay, Cassandra, thank you so much. Content creator, fortune cards, and Etsy store. Thank you. I didn't forget. I just couldn't precisely remember. Thank you very much. Everybody can check out Cassandra, Rom, Frater, Singapura, who is, I was actually thinking about you, and I'm glad that Joseph brought this up. You are kind of a cypherpunk in a way that you are here right now posting. So, yeah, the kids are going to be okay, I guess. So, even those weird Saturn maxing Singaporean kids. Thank you so much, Ron. Appreciate it. Bibliomancer, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great to see you. And I don't know about Hole and Pole posting. That doesn't sound like something very that I would talk about, but it was a very interesting suggestion nonetheless. So thank you so much for that. Mookie, appreciate it. Thank you so much for transcending time and space. Coming to the lodge, we appreciate it every time. Friend of the birds and Crowface Takini, thank you. Vanessa, thank you so much. Everybody can check out Vanessa and her amazing tie-dye, all her tie-dye stuff, especially on Insta. She's like a true Insta poster, IG poster. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, and all the love in the chat. Always appreciate that. And this is your therapy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Like your banner. Very Hodmaxing. Appreciate it. So thank you so much, and thank you guys. I'm Jin the Ninja. So okay, we'll do a proper exit. Plus Ultra presents the Grey Lodge. Or this has been the Grey Lodge. Rune Culture on Speculative Ecologies, Arc 10. I'm Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints. Ashley, Thomas, Millennial / Monty, and then of course Mr. Matt Murrah, double M, next week and this week and this weekend. So look out for that. And then we have a big special, very, very special secret emergency episode coming out. I think hopefully people will like it. And yeah, I'm on Rejects in 5 minutes or 15 minutes, but really 5 minutes. So, so thank you guys. And if you, hopefully you can watch me there. Okay. Thank you again, and peace out.